1 2 1 2. 1 2 1 2. Mic check. Hey, can y'all hear me out there? Against all odds. 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 Against all odds.
All right. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Rise and Grind Morning Show. Sorry about the late entry here, but had some things we had to handle this morning. Hope you all doing well. Let me get the guys in this morning. We've got Riley. We've got Eric. We've got quite a few topics. One most important topic, I think, is the Detroit Lions contract strategy. Is it going to blow up in their face? That's a question that we don't have really an answer to, but we're going to talk about it today. All right. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning.
How's it going, everybody? Getting lots of snow up here in the UP. We're stuck in a snow globe and it won't go away.
Still snowing up there. Riley, what's going on with you out in Utah?
Yeah, much of the same. Just rocking and rolling. We're getting into a busy season for me in work, and so yeah, I mean, I guess it never really truly slows down, but it's getting to be a busy season. And I'll tell you, I listened to the show yesterday morning. Will, you went on one of your riffs there with some strong feelings about Kayvon Thibodeau and why it wouldn't make sense for Brad to have waited on all of these, free agents only just to turn around and trade for Kayvon. I think you guys nailed it, and I think it just makes too much sense.
Yeah, unfortunately, not everybody will agree with that, right? And that's part of the job description, that when you do this every morning and you talk about your own opinions or, fact-based analysis, you're not going to win everybody over. I mean, there's people that are still going to stand firm that edge rusher is the only position for this team and the Lions are one position away or one player away, and that's fine. You can have your opinion. Like I said yesterday, I appreciate, respect everybody's fandom and everybody's opinions. We'll just agree to disagree, and we'll see what Brad Holmes does. I mean, if Brad Holmes, spends the kitty and blows all the money and, blows the wad, as they say, on one player, well, then you win. But I hope we win a Super Bowl at that point, because if we don't, I'm calling every single one of you out by name. Just kidding. I won't do that. Just kidding. I wouldn't do that. But anyway, good morning, Eric. What's up with you? Yesterday, obviously, we had long conversations about the edge rusher. At least I did with myself.
Yeah.
But today, I wanted to switch gears into something that was painted by Jeremy Reisman. So a week ago, we were waiting for contract information. And now that we've seen these contracts, I'm a little worried.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do that, would you mind welcoming everybody into the chat real quick for us?
Sure. Hey, we got some people in this morning. Let's see who was in here way early this morning. Trace, Mike P, Riley, J-Rod, Brett Lighton, Brandy Coffee, Attila Hardy, Roger Lowski. Let's see who else came in this morning. Them guys were talking it up this morning. And Roger Lowski, Kevin Barr, Randy P, Jay Cruzen came in this morning, and I think I got Maureen was in this morning, and Chuck Lund, Derek Lewis, Mr. Thomas. How's it going this morning? He always likes to say hi. The Villain Squad is in here this morning, and Luke Nykamp. So we got a few new names this morning, and don't forget, you guys, every morning, you guys need to go and click that like button. If we get 75 likes, we turn the ads off. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because every so often Will gives away a mini helmet, and we're getting really close to doing another one and getting really close to 9,000. We'd like to get to 10,000 subscribers by the draft.
Yeah, and don't forget, obviously, NFL Draft Week. I'm planning on going to at least night one as of right now. I'm hoping I'll get credentialed. Hoping we'll get credentialed for it. and then that'll obviously help and make more sense. But every year I always do a draft party, and every year I always give away. I mean, last year I gave away 10 jerseys, 1,500-1,600 bucks worth of jerseys, and we gave a whole bunch of other stuff away. I mean, there's thousands of dollars that went out last year. So all you have to do is, one, you have to be a subscriber. Two, you have to be in the show live to be able to win. And three, this year it's going to be different. So there's going to be I'm just waiting for my store to pop up. Like, it's under review. So once my store pops up, you'll have access to merch and everything else. But I want to do like the give one away and raffle one away so that we can build some funds for the Rockhound Cancer Foundation. That's going to be the way that I do it every year now. Instead of just giving the house away, let's see if we can make some differences for other people. So, contracts, man.
Yeah.
I think that Brad Holmes has been, well, it's not just Brad Holmes. It's the entire financial team over there in Allen Park. I couldn't even tell you Rod Wood obviously is a big part of that. They've been extremely frugal and smart. And I think that it's been to the benefit of this team so far because they've been able to ink some pretty sizable deals. And I know, Eric, you're going to talk about free agency winners and, expenses that have gone out this season for the NFC North. And I think what's fair to say, at least, right now, we wouldn't be able to get players signed like Jared Goff and Aleem McNeil and potentially Aiden Hutchinson, which, matter of fact, I was trying to do a video last night. I'm sick, so I feel like crap. I was trying to do this video last night about Aiden and what an insider just said yesterday. Maybe I'll cue it up today, and about his pending deal, right? And the Lions wouldn't be able to do these things if we were out there spending massive loads of dollars on free agents. It just wouldn't happen. It's not possible to happen. And I think what happens is fans look around the league and they say, well, this team spent, all this money here and this team spent all this. But how many core guys do they have spent? How many core guys have they already established, right? Not many. They've got a bunch of cheap contracts. And so do the Lions. They've got a bunch of cheap contracts. Matter of fact, yesterday I highlighted that the Lions are the number 15 or number 14 out of 15 on edge rusher expense. $15 million this year is what they've set aside so far. You sign Aiden, that balloons up to number 3 in the league. So just remember that. But anyway, Jeremy Reisman did a little bit of a review on these contracts, and I'm going to bring that in. But I have a different take. I have a different view, and I hope that I'm wrong. So let's bring it in. Okay, just audio check. I should have both you guys in here.
Yep.
Okay. Real quick on this. So anyway, shout out to obviously Jeremy Reisman putting this together. I love to highlight articles when, they do the work. I don't have to do the work, right? Helps us out a ton. So last week, Jeremy broke down the contracts of the Detroit Lions free agents, additions, and DJ Reed. And they said it was notable because it was structured a little differently than what we've seen in previous Lions contracts. Most notably, instead of Reed having a high salary in the final season, which is what you usually see with these, right? You usually see in a 4-year deal, like there's no guaranteed money after year 3 or very little. And that is your out year, or you've got an out year after year 2 in a 4-year deal. In a 3-year deal, it's typically after, year 2, you have an out year where you're able to walk away from this contract. This is different. So it says instead of Reed having a high salary in the final season of his 3-year deal, the Lions are putting that money into an option bonus. I haven't seen this yet by the Lions, at least not, from a broader perspective. It's allowing them to prorate the cap hit of that season if Detroit opts to pick it up. Now, this is the part that I have a question on. Okay, I don't understand this part of it, and I don't think that they really explained this part of it. So if they opt to pick it up into the season after Reed is gone, that makes no sense to me. What do you mean? After he's gone, you're going to pick up his bonus? Does that jive with you guys? Does that make any sense with you?
No. And all those extra years they put on. I just don't know. I looked at this yesterday and I don't understand it.
So let's look at it. I mean, I understand it, from the construct, but what I don't understand is this statement that if Detroit opts to pick it up into the season after Reed is gone, that to me, when Reed is gone, he's gone. Why would we be picking up a bonus? So the way I understand contracts in the NFL is the last season, right? If they were to move off of DJ Reed, let's say they trade him in 2027, all of this money in red, that all becomes due.
Yep.
That's all due now, right now. And you own it. All the bonuses you own. So typically in a 3-year deal, you can add 2 void years, right? So they've got a 2028 void. I don't see a 29 void, even though there's money parked here as a signing bonus. 5 years is as far out as you can go with a signing bonus. Now in the 27 option bonus, this to me is wild. So you've now parked basically we'll call it 1.2 million in 2027 and in 28, 29, 2030, and 2031. Now, let me remind you guys that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, they're under contract, I believe, through 2027 or 2028. If someone wants to look that up and verify, it might be through 28 or through 27. So at this point, you're now stacking money into future years that they're not even here, right? So here's my question or concern, if you will.
2027, Will.
For both guys?
Correct.
Okay. So at 2027, if they're not retained, are we shaping up to see another Quintricia deal where you're going to re-sign or extend, Aiden Hutchinson most likely. You might extend JMO. You might extend Kirby. You might extend Branch and Gibbs. And now you're going to have all this money coming due. Are they going to push all the chips and kind of go in with these contracts? And now we're into a situation in 2028 that if they're not here, the incoming regime is going to be screwed with no money because all of this money has now been kicked down the road. This is just a surface conversation. That's all this is. All right. This is not I'm saying it's doom and gloom. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, what if? What happens when? What if they start doing this with every contract and you're parking all of this option bonus, which I don't understand how you pick it up when a player is gone. I need to get the Spot Track guy on or Spot Track guy on. I'll reach out again. I just know it's a very, very busy time for them right now. And then you look at, I'm sorry, that was Derek Barnes. That was Barnes' contract, okay? Obviously, that one's a lot cheaper. What about DJ Reed? Same exact identical makeup here. You have $17 million cap hit in 2028. He's not even here. In 2028, I get it. Like right now, when you look at Spot Track, however you want to pronounce it, the Lions don't have squat for cap right now next year. It opens up in 27 because we don't have any players signed. And then same thing in 28. We don't have any players signed. So I understand why they're kicking the can to 28 because literally there's no one on the roster and you've got all the cap, space in the world. So I need some clarification on this. So according to them, right, they say, as you can see, the biggest cap hits for both contracts are in year 2, which again, that one's a little weird to me too, because next year in 2026, they've parked all this money in 2026. We don't have any cap space really in 2026, like I just said. And if you were to extend Aiden or any of the guys from 2022, those contracts won't kick in until 2027. So that part of it makes sense because their contract extension money won't kick in until 27. They may get some signing bonus money right now, but they might not get the full cap hit starting until 2027. So anyway, as it says, you can see that the biggest cap hit is in year 2, usually year 3, because of the fairly massive 28 dead cap hit caused by this relatively new strategy for the Lions by utilizing option bonuses in the final year of a contract. Now, why are the Lions creating the extra cap space for 2027, but potentially taking on a huge cap hit in 28? For one, they say it's just easier to manage a cap when it's spread across 2 years rather than one. Of course, that makes sense. But I would say that they're spreading this contract across multiple years, right? I mean, it's 25. You've got this thing strung out for the next 6 years, right? Seven seasons, 7 seasons. I don't even know how they did that. Additionally, assuming that the cap continues to rise each year, which we're expecting, obviously the cap hits in future years are going to be less constricting on the salary cap. That I agree with. The question still remains for me, when you have all these extensions hit, what's going to happen? For instance, a $40 million cap hit when the salary cap is $200 million is 20%. But let's say the salary cap jumps to 220 next year, and then the same $40 million cap hit would only represent 18%. So all the numbers start to jive there, right? So if you extrapolate the number, which I did not do for you this morning, and you add 30 million every year, through 2028, obviously you're going to reduce that cap expenditure by 1.5%, 2.5%, 3% every year as you get down the line. So that part of it makes sense to me. I'm just a little bit concerned that they're parking all of this money into future seasons, and it's a little worrisome because we've had this happen before. And this is the reality of a good football team, right? This is the reality of having to build a team through the draft and then, pluck a free agent here or there. This is what happens. You're going to start realizing the cost. And this is, again, exactly why you do not see Myles Garrett in Honolulu Blue today. It's exactly why. And we'll talk about Trey Hendrickson. So breaking news last night, or maybe not so much breaking anymore, about what's happening with Trey Hendrickson. So we'll get to that in just a few moments. But let me get you guys' thoughts on this. Eric, we'll go from you, then we'll go to Eric or Riley.
Yeah, so this, it's very concerning, but the thing to me is this. When COVID happened, the NFL took a hit and the salary cap did not go up. And the teams didn't know what to do because they had it all worked into all these contracts that everything was going to keep going up, 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 up. What happens if something happens again and the salary cap doesn't go up? What if the salary cap goes down? I think all of these teams are not prepared once again if something does happen. Now, I know the NFL is king. I know the NFL is a monster that just cannot be stopped and just keeps making more and more and more and more money every year. But what if it doesn't? So that would be my one thing, is what happens if another COVID type tragedy happens to the United States and to the world, and we don't have $30 million more go up on the cap? What happens then? Are all the teams screwed? And
it's a good point, Eric. So before I get to Riley, let me speak to that, because I'm not going to get political, right? I don't ever get political, but I'm just going to speak on reality. Our economy right now is tanking, and it's because of certain policies. I don't care if it's blue or red or green or purple. I don't care what it is. I don't care what color it is. I look at things from a country perspective. I'm an American. I care about America. The issue that we're seeing right now is our economy is tanking artificially right now, and it's COVID obviously caused a lot of issues. It started the whole inflation thing, right? You're just handing out trillions of what I call COVID coupons, right? Fun coupons. Everyone got fun coupons in the mail, right? We got this money put into our bank accounts. It's like, why did you just send me $500, $600, $700, $800? They wanted to prop up the economy. Well, now you're starting to realize what happened back then is starting to hit us now again, right? And it's going to continue until it ever gets paid back, which $36 trillion in debt, I doubt it's ever going to get paid back. So our future is mortgaged, right? And that's what I look at with football teams, right? When that's all I care about. I'd rather have the distraction of focusing on football. Same thing here, right? Same thing that happened to the Lions a decade ago. They mortgaged the future. And I'm hoping that doesn't happen again. But if we want to retain these guys, then you're going to have to do something. And it's going to have to be unique, whatever they do. But to your point, what if something does happen? Well, it's already happening. It's already happening. So if their balance sheets are shrinking, we may not see an increase, because you know what? They didn't plan on a 20% drop in the Dow or the NASDAQ when they rose the salary cap $30 million this year. They didn't plan on that.
Yeah.
Maybe they did, but I'm sure they didn't. They didn't see it coming. So Riley, what do you think?
Yeah, I think maybe it was a month ago. It was one of the first times, Eric, you were out of town.
Yep.
And Will, I came on. We did a show, and you talked about just getting an early look at would the Lions need to consider making a trade of a Kirby Joseph. The interesting thing to me is since that episode, it became a subject, a talking point on almost every other Lions media outlet that I have seen.
You mean all the ones that dogged me for saying it?
Right. So I absolutely can say Will was the first to get out ahead of that. And it wasn't advocating for Kirby Joseph to get traded. I remember during the season, Will specifically multiple weeks calling, hey, this will be a game where Kirby gets Will loves Kirby Joseph. But you're looking at what you always call that roster roulette, right? You're looking at, and these are the things that we're doing on the show here. We could easily just be, roses and sunflowers and everything all, looks good all the time, but you just have to consider these things and be aware of and mindful of them, just like you do in every aspect of life. So fortunately, football is a beautiful distraction from all of these things. But it just, they're things that you have to consider, right? And they're things that you have to take into account. And so you're aware of and not blindsided by them. So I hope with everything in my soul that we don't go through another Quinn Tricia era, but nothing good lasts forever. So hopefully Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are at the helm for years to come, but we just got to enjoy every year that we are a good, successful team because it's hard. The NFL is so damn competitive. It's hard to be good. It's hard to win 15 games. That's why we didn't win the Super Bowl last year, but I'm still proud of the team for the progress that they've made.
So I think that I think number one, let me just say this. The reason why we do some of the topics we do here is because not every fan of the NFL or the Detroit Lions has the time to get deep and granular into things that you just don't think about every day or talk about every day. And I think that's what helps set us apart is, we try to talk about the things that maybe you're not thinking of. Or maybe you think about it, but you don't go deep off into the weeds and spend 10 hours of research on a Sunday afternoon when you could definitely be doing something else. Like my kids are grown, right? They're in Florida. I've got time to do some things. So I'd spend my time wisely to do research. And that's why we talk about these things. It's opinions, but it's also research based. And we look at the construct of what's happening now, the future. And that's why when I make the statements that I make, like you can't just bring in these free agents and expect to have a balance sheet that works for your team. You're going to rub against that wall at some point, and it's not going to be fun, right? You're going to be not just bruised and battered, like you're going to have no pun intended, broken legs and broken arms coming out of this thing at some point when you got to pay those contracts, right? Or you just F these picks and send them upstream to some other team. And the smart teams are stacking picks, right? The smart teams are doing everything that they can to set up their future with draft picks because they realize how important it is to have a low balance sheet, but really good football players. Yeah, it may take 2 or 3 seasons to cultivate that player to their eliteness, right? They may get almost to the tippy top of the mountain. You're extracting everything you can out of that player. It may take a little bit of time. But if you put enough of those pieces together and they all kind of come to a head in the year 3 or 4, now you've got a really good football. That window's wide open, right? They talk about the window. Then the window's wide open for a couple of seasons. Well, then it may shrink a little bit. You may be out a season or 2, and then it opens up again. So I'd rather have a team that is competitive every year, that's winning football games every year, that's, dancing in the playoffs. Maybe you exit early a couple of times, but then maybe that 3rd or 4th season, like you're in the NFC Championship game, maybe you make a Super Bowl, maybe you win one. I'd rather have that repetitive cycle every 3, 4, 5 seasons than not, right? I'd rather not go all in 1 year and then watch it all dissipate for 10 years because you screwed everything up. And that's what happens to teams. Who was I listening to the other day? Speaking of draft picks, who was it? It might have been the Eagles that they made a comment about. I'll have to find it. But they were talking about the really good teams that stack draft picks. And if you go and look at the teams that have a ton of draft picks, it's either for two reasons. Compensatory game. They play the comp game better than everybody else. They don't give a crap about their football players, right? They bring these guys in, they let them go. And they try, and then they don't bring in anybody in free agency, and they play the comp game. That's one way. The other way is in a draft like this season that's loaded in certain categories of football player, you back the hell up, right? You get out of the first round. You trade down multiple times. You don't worry about this year's draft to a degree. You stack for 26 and 27. And now you've got all these first, second, and third round picks for the next 2 years that you can still then mortgage, right? You can repurpose them and move back up into the draft and snag your guy, which I trust Brad Holmes 1,000% to trade back, stack picks, and then move back up and strike like a cobra and snag a player. That's what I expect him to do. I expect him to trade back, not up. This is a draft you don't trade up in. You trade back. It is so stacked on the defensive line. You're going to be able to get some really good football players between 33 and 45 that you probably should have taken in the first round. But something's going to throw this draft off. It happens every year. And you know who that player could be, which we'll skip to that right now, Jackson Dart. So let's get done with this topic. Why is Jackson Dart going to screw up the draft this year, Riley?
Well, he's somebody that was mocked frequently from what I had seen, third round, second round. Well, now he's kind of being more projected to be a late first round pick. Now, you may have heard that on Will's mock drafts that he's done, but also CBS Sports' Pete Prisco put out a mock draft. Good old Pete Prisco. One of the biggest draft stock risers in recent weeks has been Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart, in what is being considered one of the weakest quarterback classes in years, which says a lot given that the one a few years ago was there. We all, I'm sure, know which one it is. It was a really, really bad class. But Dart is now being projected as the third signal caller taken in the 2025 NFL draft, behind Miami's Cam Ward and Colorado's Shedeur Sanders. It's not super surprising to me, just because I think we saw that the one year with these bigger bodied guys like Justin Herbert was somebody that was like, teams fall in love with a guy that's got the physical profile, that has a rocket launcher for an arm. Dart was always believed to have the tools to succeed, but late season blunders that hurt the Rebels, Ole Miss Rebels college football playoff chances initially seemed to damage his draft stock. However, a solid Senior Bowl showing may have reopened the eyes of NFL scouts. So now Pete Prisco mocks him to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We know that Pittsburgh is keen on Aaron Rodgers. There's not really that many spots left for Aaron Rodgers. So he's looking at him as, even if they do get Rodgers, that would work. He's a stopgap anyway. He thinks that Jackson Dart might be a late first round pick, third overall quarterback taken. It's not the first time I've heard it, because I know, Will, you've mentioned that he could sneak into the first round as well. But Pete Prisco put that draft out yesterday, that mock draft. So Jackson Dart could be the guy that, and that's good for the Lions. We don't need a quarterback. So all the quarterbacks that go ahead of us, all the better.
So it's interesting, thought-provoking conversation where I started with my first mock draft this year, and I put Jalen Milroe as the number one overall quarterback.
Yeah, I remember that.
Just to stoke the conversation like I did last year, where I said the Bears are stupid, they won't do this, but Jaden Daniels is the number one overall quarterback, and he's going to finish that way. He was the first quarterback that I put on my first mock draft last year. So if all things remain equal, then that means that Jalen Milroe is going to surprise the hell out of everybody this year, if I'm right. Now, I don't plan on being right, but I will say this. He has already turned some heads with how he has performed. I think he ran like a 4.37 at a pro day, which no one expected him to do. And he's got a cannon for an arm. I mean, he can just, wish the thing 70 yards downfield. Jackson Dart is someone that when you watch him play, holy cow. I don't know why he's not way up the chart already, because I see bits of Patrick Mahomes. I see bits of Josh Allen. And then I see a pure pocket passer, but I also see someone that needs a little bit of time. Like, he's coming from Ole Miss. So the problem is, I think the game's going to be a little bit too quick for him coming from where he's coming. I think he's going to take a year or two, maybe. He could shock us, right? They said the same thing about Jaden Daniels. But the thing that I see with Jackson is a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers could potentially take him at 21. What I heard is Steelers fans have PTSD about Kenny Pickett at 20, and that's why they're fearful the Steelers are going to take Dart at 21. So my thought process has always been this. The Lions better move off of pick 28. There is going to be a team, which is weird now that you're starting to hear some of these other pundits saying what I've been saying since day one of my first mock draft, that everyone should be moving back, that someone's going to move up into the back end of the first round to take a quarterback. I just heard Daniel Jeremiah say that yesterday. I heard Ian Rappaport say that yesterday, but I said it 4 weeks ago. And the reason why I saw that happening is because of the way that this draft is projected to be heavy on defense at some point, a lot of defense in the first round. It's going to give an opportunity for a team to take whatever they want at the beginning of this draft, talking about the Giants, the Browns, or the Titans. Someone told me I was crazy the other day for putting Abdul Carter number 1 to the Tennessee Titans. I wouldn't even be surprised if it's Travis Hunter. I don't think it's a quarterback. I'm not so sure that it's Cam Ward. I'm seeing Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. I'm seeing Cam slip to 6 to the Jets. I'm seeing Shedeur slip all the way to 16. So I wouldn't be so bought into this taking a quarterback in the top 5. Maybe a team will. Maybe some teams will move up. But there's way too good of defensive players and other game changers. And if you're not sold on this quarterback class, you can still move up to snag a quarterback later. So, again, I'll finish this with, I'm fully expecting if the Giants or the Browns, I can't remember who's picking, like who's got pick 35. Let's just say this, pick 33, 34, 35, or 36. If they still need a quarterback, and it's pick 26, pick 27, pick 28 in the first round, I am fully expecting one of those teams to move up into the first round to take that quarterback so they have 5 years of control. So if I'm Brad Holmes, I'm on the phone daily with this team and saying, look, I want to be your trade partner. I would love to have pick 33, 34, 35, or 36. So only moving back a handful of draft picks and make it happen. What could Brad do in that case? Well, he'll probably get a pick swap, right? So you might get obviously you'll get the second round pick. You might get a third round pick or a fourth round pick that year to make that move. And then next year you'll probably get a third round or a fourth round pick to go with it, or maybe a fifth round pick. It's worth it, is what I'm saying. It's worth it. But with all the draft picks that we have and all these later round picks that we have currently, Brad could package all that up and move from 33, 34, 35 to 32. And maybe still end up with an extra pick and now a player. That's the smart move. Back up, stack your future with draft picks. Get on the phone, Brad. Make the move back. Stack our future with draft picks. He lives in the draft for a reason. This is the draft you stack. And once you move up, then you can move back a little bit, and you could even stack more picks. Eric, what are your thought process on this? What's your thoughts?
All right. So I'm going to take you guys back a few years. And I want you to remember when the New England Patriots won the Super Bowl. They were drafting number 32. And a team, I think it was the Ravens, traded with them to get back up into the first round and select Lamar Jackson at the end of the first round so they could have that 5th year of control. I'm pretty sure that's how it went down. And I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of teams, probably 3 or 4 of them, trying to do that exact same thing at the end of the first round because they don't think that they are the talent to be at the very top, aka the Browns, the Giants, the Jets. Somebody's going to want one of these guys, but the defensive talent is just too much in this draft, or the need for an offensive lineman. And that's where you take those guys. You take those guys at the top you take the quarterback at the back end of the first round, it's going to be way cheaper for you in the long run, and you get that 5th-year option. You get that extra year of control out of them.
Exactly. So let me just paint this picture. So there's been some conversation about Travon Walker potentially being a trade bait, right, in the draft from the Jags. And I would say this, if there's any validity to this, the reason why is they bring in Josh Hines-Allen, or they just signed him to a deal. So if you look at roster roulette, and the thinking is, okay, you're at pick, so the Jags are at pick 36. Well, if you trade him and you end up getting some picks for him, you could definitely see the Jags being trade partners to move up. You could definitely see them backfilling now the roster roulette behind Allen, who they just paid, to get some rookies in, grab a couple of rookies on the defensive line, and now you're stacked for the future with low contracts. And that's a smart play. So if you don't have any faith in Travon Walker for whatever reason, then yeah, you're going to end up trying to trade the guy. The problem is in this draft, when you're trying, and I think this is what the problem is for Hendrickson and others, this draft is so loaded, trying to trade a defensive end that is going to require a massive cap hit is almost impossible this year, because to move up in this draft is not going to cost you as much as it did in years past, because it's so loaded with defensive talent. Teams are going to be like, look, yeah, I would love to move up, but I'm not paying you last year's numbers to move up. Like, I could sit and wait, and they might fall to me. But if you want to make a deal, yeah, last year it might have been worth a third. This year it's probably worth a fifth. What do you say? You know what I mean? You're going to have teams that are making moves that are going to be head scratchers. You're going to be like, why did they just trade for that? Because that's what we're going to see, some funky deals going on that's going to make you scratch your head. I promise you. So like I was saying earlier, the Browns at 33, the Giants at 34, the Titans at 35, the Raiders at 37, the Patriots at 38. All of these teams are going to be movers and shakers potentially up into the first round. And that could be with Detroit at 28. I think that if Detroit was going to move forward, I think the furthest they're going to be able to get is probably 20 with the Denver Broncos. And that may only cost a pick swap and a third-round pick. That's it. That may be a fifth round in the future. That might be all it's going to take. As where last year, that would have been a pick swap and a second-round pick and probably a fourth-round pick in the future. That's too rich this year because the Lions are picking at 28 and 60. There's no way you're going to give up 28 and 60 in this draft to move up to pick 20 to get one player. Where at 60, you're still going to get a very talented football player that's probably going to start day one. So, interesting conversation today. Let me get through this next one real quick because Eric's got a long one on free agency grades. Anything in the chat popping out to anybody?
We just need to get to 75 likes.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, we got to get some people up there.
Let's get that. And I will say, for what it's worth, from what I've heard, I got a very good friend that is a very diehard Jacksonville Jaguars fan. He is convinced they are not trading Walker. They don't want to. It's just it's one of those rumors like the Lions are going to be getting Myles Garrett. But yeah, it's great conversation. It's great thought process. It's great context to have. And I like what you're saying, Will, too, because a lot of the times there's the other debate is, well, why would the Lions move back? There's not as many roster spots to fill. How many draft picks could make the 53? But we don't know. We don't know where Brad Holmes values and ranks these guys, but we will know here soon. We're what, 4 weeks away?
Yeah, it'll be 30 days away. It'll be interesting to hear how many, because every year he says how many first round grades he has. It'll be interesting to hear what he says this year. Have a good morning, Mr. Thomas. Thank you for joining us this morning. Okay, so real quick, this one is a doozy to me. I didn't realize that there was even conversation happening surrounding what we're about to talk about, because one, I don't know how it's possible, and I hate to use the word monopoly, but is this sort of a monopoly if the NFL Network is sold If the NFL sells their rights to all of the NFL content, would that not end up being a monopoly for a certain 4-letter company called ESPN? So let me pull this in here. It's probably going to look messed up when I transition, but I'll fix it. So headlines of the day. Last night, this hit my radar. Obviously, I wanted to learn more about it. What's going on here? Why would the NFL even consider doing this? But the NFL apparently is considering selling their rights in NFL Network, all of the NFL content, to ESPN. So last month, I guess that word emerged that ESPN and the NFL had finally resumed talks regarding the acquisition of NFL media. This week, that first price tag emerged at $2 billion. Wow. Now, via Brendan Klein of awfulannouncing.com, never heard of it, going to check it out today. Andrew Marchand of theathletic.com said that this week on his podcast that number will be as much as $2 billion. Now, the league also could emerge with an ownership stake in ESPN if this deal gets done. So regardless of whether the NFL media assets are actually worth that much money, under a strict accounting analysis, everything is worth precisely what anyone will pay for it, right? It's not so much what it's worth today, how much you're willing to pay me for it, right? And so since this move would also serve as insurance against not getting boxed out in the next wave of broadcast right negotiations, it could be money well spent. So ESPN's been losing, right, because of the Netflix deals and you know the Amazon deals and all the other deals that the NFL's been doing. So ESPN is trying to figure out a way, hey, how do we get, our pony back in this race? Well, let's just buy it. Well, let's just buy the NFL media rights. So with the streaming companies becoming more active, like I said, Netflix hoping to make another big splash this season. One of the existing 3-letter broadcast partners could end up SOL. If you don't know what that means, it's shit out of luck. Really, how could the league leave ESPN and ABC at the altar for Monday Night Football or some other package if ESPN owns and operates NFL Network and other properties, and if the league owns a chunk of ESPN? See, that's the play here, is that ESPN wants back in. So this would be a deal that was also close to closing last May in 2024. It didn't happen. It was backburnered. And now, back here in 2025, talks have resumed once again that the NFL may be selling its rights to all of their media landscapes to ESPN. This is a big-time shocker. Is this not a monopoly then? Wouldn't ESPN have everything to a degree? Then you got to think about this too. So Daniel Jeremiah, Ian Rappaport, anybody that works for NFL Network would now be an employee of ESPN. That's kind of weird.
Rich Eisen.
Right? That's kind of weird. So
Who got fired from ESPN?
Is Rich Eisen going to be the GM now? Is he going to be the guy that's just kind of, calling the shots?
Well, yeah, Rich left or was fired from ESPN. He talks about it on his podcast about his last day at ESPN and how he thought he'd never, do this stuff again.
Yeah. It's crazy. Well, I'm glad that Rich does what he does. I mean, he's one of the best. I mean, he's the best in my opinion. So what do you guys think about this? I mean, this is the big deal, right? I mean, is the NFL now trying to pad their wallets because of what's going on in the economy? Are they thinking that, adding an extra $2 billion bucks to their bank sheet and getting a stake in ESPN is a way to further grow the NFL? I think that on the surface, right, if ESPN were to make every game available through ESPN Plus or whatever, what happens with the NFL, premium programs now and NFL Plus, all that? What happens with all that? Does that still stay the same? Even though I have or had subscriptions, all that stuff, right? The problem is you still don't get every game. And even though you want to watch it, you can't because it's blacked out or it's not live. I think the first thing the NFL needs to figure out is how can you make every game live for everybody with one subscription? Just one.
Yeah.
And if that costs you $300 a year, great. I don't want to pay for cable to have to watch football. Like, I should be able to stream it, no problem. I mean, I have antennas for like my TVs because they get like all the channels. And, for $40-$50, you get a really good HD. Well, there's no such thing as HD over antenna, but it calls itself an HD antenna. You get really good channels, right? And so I do stuff like that because I don't want cable. But I have $200 worth of streaming service subscriptions. So it's like, I didn't save any money. But anyway, NFL possibly selling the media rights to ESPN. Riley, what is your thought?
Yeah, I think it's exactly right what you're saying. I would love the option to just pay for a team, because the funny thing for me is when I was in high school, the way I would watch Lions games was literally, it was a play-by-play tracker. It had the football field on the NFL.com, and the ball would just move on the screen. And then eventually I started making some money so I could, buy Sunday Ticket, which for years was, the Lions were never shown here in Utah because they weren't good, right? So you'd get Thanksgiving, maybe one other game. And then now, like last year, paid $300 for Sunday Ticket, knowing I'm not even going to need it for half of these games. But I'd rather just get it and have it out of the way and know I can watch the game either way. But yeah, it's just, I mean, it's an empire, man. It's there's so much money involved here with this, and anything that would make it more accessible and easy, for people to watch, because I'll pay attention to other games, but I would love just to have the option to just pay for a single game each week, because obviously I'd get every Lions game, but
yeah, be able to, just like you said, pay for a team. Like, I want to be able to watch every Lions game this season, and I want to spend my $15 a month on the platform, but I get to choose the Lions.
mm-hmm.
So $15 a month gets me the Lions every game, and then every other game that's within my broadcasting network. You know what I mean? Yep. So if it's the Eagles this week, or if it's the Packers or the Vikings, or maybe you get to choose, your team and then a division, the NFC North or something. You know what I mean? Like that. That's how I would do it. But anyway, I'm here. I'm not there. Eric, what is your initial thought on this stuff?
All right. For 10 plus years, I was a DirecTV Sunday Ticket buyer. I like to have every game, every Sunday, every Monday, every Thursday. And I am surprised that the NFL is not setting up the 3 and 4 letter companies to bamboozle them all. Okay. You get rid of all of them. You develop your own streaming service, and you put all the games on your streaming service, and you charge whatever you want to, whether it's a la carte per game, a la carte per team, or you just get unlimited, unlocked everything. But to watch all the games, you're going to have to pay. And I see that coming. Eventually, someday it's going to happen where the only way to watch these games isn't over the air. It's going to be streaming only. And it's going to be just like a pay-per-view fight. You're going to have to pay to see these games. It's going to happen in our lifetimes. I thought it would never happen, but I full-heartedly see it happening, especially with ticket prices going up. And instead of paying, $200 to go to a Lions game at the Ford Field, I can pay $20 and watch it at home. And I just don't think it's going to be free over the air much longer.
Yeah, if it's on a local channel, right? If it's on a local, 8, 13, 3 or whatever, obviously you're going to get it. If you have local, like an antenna gets you that, right? You get your local channels. That's the only reason why I got it, was to make sure that I could get those. But it picks up so many more channels. It's not even crazy. It's not even funny. Like, it's crazy how many channels it actually gets. Which anyway, it just, to me, this just speaks of the NFL getting richer and fans getting poor, right? Ticket prices are already crazy enough. I think if you give all these rights to ESPN, they're going to box out everybody, and they're going to make it so ungodly expensive. Isn't what happened to the old thought process of, let's just say 10 million people watch NFL football on Sundays. And so you're charging $15 a month, to 10 million people. Well, if you charge $9.99 and you gained another 10 million people, wouldn't that make more sense? Right? It's not about hitting a home run on every sale. I would rather hit singles 1,000 times than a home run 100 times. Like, I'd rather not sell something for $1,000 100 times, but I'd rather sell that thing maybe for $100 1,000 times or more. You know what I mean? It's that's to me how good business is done in the world. It's you'd rather ship more, right, than ship less. You want to ship more as long as product's available, right? You got to ship more. Maybe in today's
if it makes sense, it makes dollars, right?
Right. All right, so Eric, we've got a long segment up on NFC North free agency grades, but first, I have to give a big shout out to Megan this morning. It is her birthday this morning. Obviously, I wish her happy birthday this morning. Obviously, when she got home from work, but so Megan, love you. I appreciate you, and happy birthday today. I won't say how old you are because we're both getting old, but anyway, happy birthday. So Eric, what do we got? What do we got up next here, man? NFC North free agency grades.
Yeah.
75 likes, good timing.
What's that?
With 75 likes, good timing. Traders
Oh,
has
there
a
we go.
request effort.
Yeah, we hit it.
There you go. You like the stream from Megan. There you go. You like the stream for her birthday, right? You wish her a happy birthday.
So I'm going to need you guys all to prepare for tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to have Eric's 50th birthday spectacular, and I'm going to need all you guys to hit those likes super fast tomorrow. All right, here we go. NFL, NFC North free agency grades. This year's NFC free agency class has been widely considered to be one of the worst in recent history. So let's take a look at how all four of the NFC North teams tackled free agency and take a peek at what they spent, who they got, and give them all a grade from A to F. So feel free to play along and give them a grade in the chat. So let's start with none other than the Green Bay Packers. So according to Over the Cap, and I updated this morning, the Green Bay Packers spent a total of $148,300,000 in free agency. Now that's over the lifespan of the contracts. That's not what's hitting them this year. And this particular writer that I got this story from, he gave the Green Bay Packers a C-. Their key additions this season were re-signings and signings of offensive guard Aaron Banks and cornerback Nate Hobbs. And then the key departures were defensive tackle to Daryl Slayton, cornerback Eric Stokes, and running back A.J. Dillon, as well as center Josh Myers. So they have a few people that they need to supplant. So they need to get some people in there. Green Bay splurged for one of the top offensive guards available, giving Aaron Banks $77 million over 4 years. It's a lot of money, but protecting Jordan Love is important. Banks has surrendered just one sack over his last 897 pass blocking snaps. Nate Hobbs is a starting defensive back who can play outside or in the slot, but the Packers need another cornerback and pass rushers and wide receivers, and the offensive line needs a look. Naturally, you don't have to account for all these positions in free agency, but Green Bay definitely has some needs to address. Green Bay is hitting free agency just like they do every year, with no real big splash signings, instead relying on the draft to build and not buy the team. Though many national critics and Packer fans are quick to criticize the way the Packers are handling free agency this year. So this writer gave them a C-. I'm going to be nice today, and I am going to give the Green Bay Packers a B. I'm a little bit nicer than this guy. What do you guys think?
Riley, go ahead.
Yeah, it's so funny because as you mentioned that, it's Packers fans are not happy, but at what point do you just, I get there's just natural consternation for wanting your team to do well, but I can't say I'm not going to give them an F because they're usually a very good team, until they start having losing season after losing season and dysfunction, which we just haven't seen from Green Bay. I can't feel like I'm smarter than what they have going on over there. So I'm kind of right there with you, Eric. I would say, nothing splashy or super sexy, but I don't know that that's necessarily what they needed. I expect the Packers to be a good team again next year. So I think that they've made good moves, and I'd give them a B, maybe B minus.
Okay, so look, the Packers do the same thing, it seems like, every year in free agency. Typically they don't spend large amounts of money. And they try to keep things, copacetic, I guess, for future future transactions. Last year, obviously, they negotiated a deal with Jordan Love to make sure that they had a quarterback of the future. I think that was probably their worst decision, was extending Jordan Love to that kind of a deal. But that may be the worst of the decisions that they've made in a long time. Jordan Love can still turn out to be a really good quarterback. So this group that gave them a C minus, who was that?
It was CBS.
Okay, so CBS. Yeah, I'm not in love with CBS, but Green Bay splurged obviously for one offensive guard available, so they gave Aaron Banks $77 million over 4 years. Like that is an extremely affordable contract. Less than $20 million a year, and then they went and splurged on Nate Hobbs. But when you look at Nate Hobbs' contract, it's not what you think it is.
For you, Will, is that feeling like Jordan Love was not a good decision for them? Is that because it was a small sample size, or do you just not think he's a good player?
Small sample size is the biggest part.
Gotcha. Okay.
So what he was able to do the last half of that season before, it was incredible, right? But I would then question the competition that he faced and all of the other things that surround that. What did he do last year? After he gets his deal, what happened last year? Yeah, they still won, 10 games last year, I think.
Yeah.
But statistically, I don't think that he was an extremely great quarterback based on the money that you gave him. Compare it to Jared Goff. I think Jared Goff has earned every bit of his deal that hasn't even hit yet. So looking at Nate Hobbs' contract, there was a big number, right? Wasn't it like 4 years, $60 million or something? 4 years, 48, somewhere in that. I think it was 4 years, 48 for Nate Hobbs. 16 million signing bonus, 16 million guaranteed. Extremely friendly contract for the Packers on a guy that could end up being a really good corner still in this league. So I think that I would have to give them a B plus because they didn't do anything that really inhibited their team moving forward. Hope that makes sense.
So Nate Hobbs signed a 4-year, $48 million contract with the Green Bay Packers, including a $16 million signing bonus, $16 million guaranteed, and an average salary of $12 million in 2025. Hobbs will earn base salary of $1.2 million, a signing bonus of $16 million, and a workout bonus of $400,000 while carrying a cap hit of $5.9 million and a dead cap value of $16 million.
The thing on Nate Hobbs, though, is his cap hit this year is only 5.9 million.
Yeah.
Which is extremely low. Base salary of 1.2. And the only thing that is really escalating what he's getting paid this year would be that $4 million signing bonus. So dead cap, if they walked away from him right now, is only $16 million.
Mm-hmm.
And that number obviously gets lower and lower and lower. The thing that I don't see in their contract is a bunch of void years and everything else that they didn't do. So they could walk away from him after this year and only owe him $12 million. So anyway, good deal for them. Who's next?
That's pretty cheap. So up next is Benedict Johnson and the Chicago Bears, who spent big in free agency, spending $142,757,000. CBS gives the Bears an A for their additions. So they brought in offensive lineman Jonah Jackson, formerly of the Detroit Lions, offensive lineman Joe Thuney from Kansas City, edge Dayo Odeyingbo, and then defensive tackle Grady Jarrett, and center Drew Dahlman. Their key departure was offensive lineman Coleman Shelton. The Bears have been aggressive in free agency in the Ryan Poles era, but it hasn't exactly translated to wins. If you remember, Poles said he was going to get the NFC North and never give it back. Well, he hasn't grasped it yet. That may change in 2025. Chicago needed to improve the offensive line that surrendered 68 sacks on Caleb Williams last year. And the Bears did that by trading for Jonah Jackson, Joe Thuney, and they signed center Drew Dahlman. This will give Caleb Williams a chance to develop. And Dale also appears to be a sought-after free agent, and the Bears landed him to rush the passer opposite of Montez Sweat. The Chicago Bears were big spenders and bought almost an entirely new offensive line. Only time will tell if they can stay healthy, gel with each other, and turn around the Bears' horrific O-line from 2024. Now, if you remember the year before and the year before, and probably the year before, the Bears went out and spent on free agents. They've brought in so many free agents and they never gel and they never get it together. Green Bay has been last or third in the division for the last 4 or 5 years at least. And I just don't think it's going to work. I think they spent too much and tried to bring in too many players all at once, especially, bringing in an entire offensive line. So I'm going to give them a C for now. And that is my grade for the Chicago Bears. What do you think, Riley?
I would give them an A. And the reason for me is because, and it's true, there's that notion, well, the Bears are off-season champions. It's like all those years the Lions took receivers. All right, they take one. Well, eventually they got one right. To me, and I hope that they fail, but I just know if Ben Johnson had come back, I would have been elated. So I don't feel like because he left, I don't suddenly think this guy can't coach. Now, we'll find out if he can be a head coach and a good head coach. My suspicion is that he can and that he will be. And there's no one right way to build a team. I would rather have the Lions built the way that they built than what Chicago is doing. But if the difference in all those years where the Bears spent all that money, they didn't have great coaching. So if they have a good coach now, if Caleb Williams is more mature, gets guys to start buying in and believing in him as a leader, and they start hot next year, the vibes can be good. And then I think that Chicago would be a problem. But as far as what their needs were, I mean, there were multiple signings that Bears fans are like, oh, this is just getting better and better and better. I think that offseason wise, they've got to prove it on the field, but I would give them an A. I think they've done excellent this offseason.
Okay. I don't want to say I'm in between, what both you guys are thinking, but I'm more inclined to give them probably an A- this year. And the reason for me maybe a little bit simplified, and that is, Olamide Zacchaeus, or however, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, wide receiver from Washington. Like that is a sneaky under the radar, third option wide receiver now for Caleb Williams. I think he had about 500-600 yards last year, maybe 45 touches, or 45 catches, and he's someone that can produce. And within this offensive structure, he might be a bona fide weapon that has been underutilized so far throughout his career. So to me, that was a very good signing for them, relatively inexpensive on a 1-year deal. The fact they brought in Drew Dahlman, maybe one of the best centers in the league. I think that he stacks up against a guy like Frank Ragnow, even though, obviously Frank, in my opinion, is the best in the league. I've seen Frank kind of, lose some battles over the last couple of seasons, but more or less, he doesn't give up pressures and sacks. Dahlman is in that same realm, and he's massive. So when you're trying to take an offense to the next level, you start with the trenches. And if you want to give the credit to Ben Johnson, great. Here's what I'll tell you. I see a difference between Ryan Poles of 23 and 24 and Ryan Poles of 25. These are Ben Johnson's picks, in my opinion. I think that Ben Johnson is the one that put this stuff together or sold Ryan Poles on what to do. I think that gives Ryan Poles obviously the out, right? Oh, I didn't do this. I didn't want these guys. You know, it's Ben Johnson's picks. I could just see that out of that snake. Deo Odeingbo. Wow. Like, really? This guy's good. And if you want to say that, you know, you could have a stacked, you know, ends on both sides of the football, this might be one of the teams that does with Montez Sweat and Deo Odeingbo. This is a great signing. And the fact that you got him at 3 years at $48 million, like, that's super cheap. I wish that you could sign Aiden for something like that. Not going to happen. The guy can produce. This is a great signing for them. 35-inch arms. You talk about someone that I'm in love with just because of arm length. Like, this guy is able to navigate around tackles because of his arm length alone. Their defense could be scary if they get everything together. Then they brought in Grady Jarrett on the defensive line, another $43 million deal. Great move by them. They went outside and inside. They stuck to the trenches. Joe Tooney might have been the option that they brought in on day 1 or 2, whatever it was, that woke me up. They brought in Jonah Jackson. I was laughing. They brought in Joe Tooney. I'm like, shit. Like, really? I see what they're doing. The Bears, they hit it. They started with Jonah. They got laughed at, and then they just looked at it and they said, okay, enough's enough. This is what we're going to do. And they brought in some guys that can really change this offense. Devin Duvernay, another sneaky option for them. He used to be good. I don't know what he's going to do on this squad, but he has potential. So between reshaping the entire offensive line and bringing in a couple of defensive pieces, A- for me. This has been their best free agency. They spent a lot of money, yes. How much money did they spend, Eric?
Oh, let's see. The Bears spent a whopping $142,757,500.
Plus, they're paying Ben what, $13 million. That's double what Eberflus was making. I think that's more than he's making more than Campbell is now.
I think Campbell makes 13, doesn't he, or 12?
I thought Campbell made 11.
I don't remember. You know what? Campbell doesn't give a shit. He just coaches football. It's not about money to him. So where do the Bears rank right now? I don't even remember where they rank on the free agency hierarchy of expense. Do you know?
Where they rank what?
Rank on the hierarchy of what they spent this year in free agency.
Oh, let me look here. So the Bears were, let me find them. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12th.
See, and that's nuts to me because, you know, you had Amon-Ra St. Brown jump on his podcast like, oh my God, they're spending all this money and where are they getting all this money and F this, F that, and they're 12th. Like
the Packers and the Vikings both spent more than the Bears did.
Well, the Vikings spent an ass load, but I think that when you look at free agency, I think you have to look at the players that you brought in, not the players that you re-signed or extended. I think that free agency for me is who did you bring into your team that was not on your team before? Yeah. And then you can assess it from, okay, what guys were you able to keep that matter? So again, you go back, I'm not trying to make this long on the Bears, but when you go back to 23 and they bring in a guy like DeAndre Swift for 3 years at, I don't know, was it $30 million or something?
Yeah, it was a bunch.
I'm like, what are you? It was 3 years for $24.5 million, $15.3 million guaranteed. That was probably the dumbest signing they've ever made. Now, he didn't have a terrible year last year, but Swift has never been healthy. Like, he's never really played an entire season. I don't know if he played an entire season last year. I fully expect the Bears to get after Ashton Gentry or Omarion Hampton. I think that is one of their top draft picks this year outside of defense. So now that they have Deo and Grady and Montez, I expect them to backfill those contracts with a defensive end that's a rookie, and this defense is going to be stacked, and they're going to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
All right, who's next?
All right. Up next, we have the Minnesota Vikings, who spent the most of any team in the NFC North and the second most in the entire NFL this free agency period. Let's look at who they brought in. They brought in offensive guard Will Fries, cornerback Isaiah Rodgers, center Ryan Kelly, defensive tackle Jonathan Allen, defensive tackle Jonathan Hargrave, running back Jordan Mason, cornerback Byron Murphy came back, running back Aaron Jones came back, safety Harrison Smith came back, and they brought in wide receiver Rondell Moore. Their key departures: Sam Darnold, Cameron Byron, and edge Patrick Jones II. What's interesting is that the Vikings left day one of free agency with a D grade from CBS Sports, but they've never been fantastic ever that first day. GM Kwesi Adolfu kept cornerback Byron Murphy in-house, then scored former Colts offensive lineman Will Fries and Ryan Kelly, and a couple of veterans in Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave on the defensive side. I also love the trade for former San Francisco 49ers running back Jordan Mason to pair with Aaron Jones. JJ McCarthy better be ready to live up to expectations in his first season as a full-time starter. Last year, Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones said he was going all in. Well, this screams going all in to me. And they gave him, or the Minnesota Vikings, they gave them an A+ grade. I'm not going to go that far. And the reason I'm not going to go that far is because they did not pick up a veteran quarterback to back up JJ McCarthy. They are all in on JJ. They haven't brought in Aaron Rodgers. They haven't brought in Russ. None of them. There's been talk that Ryan Tannehill might sign with them, which would be a fine, serviceable backup. But there's no guy there to mentor him and bring him along. There's nobody there. So I think that's something you really, really need. You can't just ignore it, and you can't bring in just anybody to mentor your first round pick quarterback. So I'm going to give them a B as well, as I did the Packers. And that's partly because they spent a lot of money and they did not bring in a quarterback. So what do you think, Riley?
Yeah, I got to give these guys an A as well, because I know I interviewed Thor Nystrom last offseason for Talking Football. And then obviously Thor's, been on with Will a few times as well. But I just knew from that conversation with him, I've known that Minnesota was all in on JJ McCarthy. So it was crazy to me when Sam Darnold was having so much success early last year. It's like, well, what do they do? And I would text with Thor and talk with him, and it never changed. And everything that he has said has come to fruition. So for Minnesota, this is coming together exactly how they anticipated that it would the whole way through. I think that they're going to need a good backup, but ideally, they don't need to ever play a backup. JJ McCarthy, I feel like, is a very mature player. He did have the benefit of last year. He didn't play, but a year in an NFL system, he's further ahead this year than he would have been last year. This team won 14 games, and you just rattled off the names of the players that they added, the talent that they retained, the talent that they added. It's going to be fascinating to see who's the better quarterback in a few years, McCarthy with Minnesota or Williams with the Bears. Both franchises are kind of all in on their quarterback, but that's what NFL teams do for the most part, right? So they're comfortable banking on JJ being good. I think the Minnesota Vikings are a damn good team. I feel like they've even gotten a little bit better. I expect McCarthy's going to be a good quarterback for them. They are a concern for me for sure. So I'd give them an A.
Okay. As far as the backup quarterback goes, they have Brett Ripien.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, he doesn't get you real excited, right? I mean, he's been in the league now for about 6 years or something like that. There's still potential that they could bring in, some sort of a veteran, but I honestly don't even know. I haven't looked to see what veteran quarterbacks are even available at this point that, wouldn't want to play. if my goodness, Flacco, right? Flacco's not signed anywhere, is he?
Nope.
See, and he's old as dirt, but I would bring in a guy like Flacco, even to be a quarterback coach. But I would bring in a guy like Flacco to put on this roster to help J.J. McCarthy. Not that I want this to happen, but you bring in a guy like that, I think, to mentor. You don't expect him to play, but if he had to play, man, does he have some weapons around him? Flacco would be great inside that offense, and I think that would be the move that I would make. It doesn't put any stress on JJ, and I think that's
Right.
what you want to do with your quarterbacks is, yeah, you want them to sit and learn, but at the same time, you need to have someone that's smarter than them, someone that's been around the block a few thousand times in Flacco to come in and mentor this kid. I think would be a smart move. But if you're listening, don't do it.
That's exactly why they didn't get Rodgers. Would have brought the drama.
Exactly.
So
Rodgers, he
you're
would tank.
right.
He would tank the Vikings.
Yeah, Flacco would be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I look at, again, if I look at the guys that they brought in, I apologize. My mic is just not working with me today. I got to fix all this later. Javon Hargrave, defensive line. I mean, wow. Great pickup, right? My neck is just crooked today. Who else did they bring in? They brought in guard Will Fries. So they stepped up their guard play immediately on the offensive line. I don't believe Isaiah Rodgers was on the team last year, right? So they brought in Isaiah Rodgers.
Yep.
Who else did they bring in? Tavier Thomas. I mean, he's okay, right? He's not someone to jump up and down about, but Jonathan Allen, defensive line. I mean, really? Who else? Byron Murphy was on the squad last year, correct?
Yes.
He was.
So they re-signed him. Aaron Jones, they re-signed. I think that was smart. Maybe they overpaid, but that was smart.
Way overpaid.
So I would say that just from the minor moves that they made, they weren't so minor, right? They had the best linebacking group in the league last year. At the beginning of the season, I did my unbiased reviews, which I'll do again this year. But when I take a look at the Vikings depth chart currently, just adding players like Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, Isaiah Rodgers, another backup linebacker, Eric Wilson. I mean, Jeff Okuda, whatever. Tavier Thomas. Good moves. But on the defense, they totally upgraded their defensive line, which still has Jonathan Greenard, Blake Cashman, Ivan Pace, Andrew Van Ginkel. Very, very, very tough defensive line once again. What they were missing last year was the push from their three defensive linemen. That's what they were missing. They're, rushing 8, dropping 8. I think that they're going to change that a little bit this year. I don't think that they're going to rush 8 and drop 8. I think that they're going to try to rush 3, and then they're just going to get after you anyway, which way that they can. But bringing in Will Fries and Ryan Kelly, I think that this was an extremely smart move to shore up their offensive line. That does return Brian O'Neill and Blake Brandel and Christian Darashaw. So if there's anyone that needs an upgrade there, maybe it's Brandel, but I don't know enough about Brandel, to be honest with you. Smart moves. So Justin Skule, they brought him in to back up right tackle Brian O'Neill. I think Skule was with the Chiefs last year, if I'm not mistaken. But then Jordan Mason, man, this was the signing that I was like, damn.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jordan Mason last year, he was a call when I was doing the fantasy football stuff with my God, my mind is numb today.
Hey, when that will
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
The super chat, I want to catch it because I'm seeing a bar go down for Chris.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that disappears after that, so I just wanted to make sure.
Oh,
no,
here
it
we
stays.
go. I see it
Okay.
now. Yeah.
didn't
Chris,
know-
Chris,
I just
MVP
make sure.
Harris, $4.99 super chat says, "Remember, guys, the Lions are loaded with a bunch of 23-year-olds not in their prime yet." Yeah, dude, smart, absolutely smart. Appreciate your donation this morning, man. You're exactly right. Exactly right. The Lions are young. So overall, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give the Vikings a A-. I mean, the Jordan Mason signing alone to back up Aaron Jones was huge. Like Jordan Mason is this underrated running back that when I think he had his opportunities last season with San Francisco, and he really proved himself. And I think that this is a guy that can really explode onto the scene, but we'll see how many touches he gets. But simply, Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen attacking the defensive line the way that they did to back up their linebackers, I'm going to put the call out right now. The Vikings will have a top 8 defense in 2025. They will finish as a top 8 defense in 2020. If they stay healthy, they'll finish the top 8 defense. A- for me.
All right.
Hey, do we have the Laporta touchdown queued up for Chris as part of that super chat?
I don't have those because when I had to change it, I had to change everything. But let me do this. I have something else instead. Shoot, I thought I did. Where is it? Where's it at? Poop. We'll do this.
If not, I'll make it. Hey, there we go.
The Detroit Lions select Jahmyr Gibbs, running back, Alabama.
All right, Chris, you got the selection of Jahmyr Gibbs instead of the Laporta TD. I'll work on getting all of those Dan Miller calls loaded up today, but I'm going to do last year's Dan Miller calls. It was 23s that I had loaded up. I'll load up 24s. There was plenty to pick from. I'll load them up today. Appreciate you, buddy.
All right. And last but very not least, let's take a look at the Detroit Lions and what they did in free agency. Once again, Brad Holmes told everyone exactly what he was going to do, and he did exactly that, to the dismay and impatient one marshmallow fans of the Detroit Lions and pundits all around the world. The Detroit Lions spent a whopping $895,000.
Say that again.
$87,895,000.
$87 million.
Yes.
Are you sure that's all they spent?
That's it. No other team in the NFC North spent less than 100 million. So where you had Minnesota spent a whopping 275 million. The Bears spent 142 million. The Packers spent 148 million. And then you have the Lions all the way down at 87 million. Now, they gave the Detroit Lions a B. The key additions and re-signings this year were cornerback DJ Reed, Levi Onwuzurike, Derek Barnes, defensive tackle Roy Lopez, linebacker Grant Stewart, cornerback Avonte Maddox, and cornerback Rock Ya-Sin. The key departures were Carlton Davis, edge Zadarius Smith, and defensive back Ifeatu Melifonwu. The Lions lost Carlton Davis, but did score a top free agent in DJ Reed, who a lot of people consider to be probably one, if not the best signings in all of free agency this year. It was a pretty limited class, but the Lions got the bell of the ball. Detroit clearly values the defensive front, and the re-signings of Levi O and Marcus Davenport were worth it. That doesn't mean the Lions should be done adding to the defensive line, and I wouldn't mind another weapon added in the draft. Once again, Brad Holmes seems to be taking a draft don't buy strategy for free agency, which may not be the sexiest strategy, but you cannot argue with his results. And just like someone was saying in the chat earlier, with our super chat, we have so many guys that are 23 or younger. And what Brad is doing is he is banking on all of these 16 or 20 something guys that were on IR. He's banking on them coming back, being healthy, and this not happening again. He's gotten cartons of milk all ready to go. So all of them are going to be drinking their milk and taking calcium supplements. No more of these broken bones next year. And whatever they got to do for all these torn biceps and triceps and everything else, they're going to get those all reworked, and they're going to make it better. So in my opinion,
cadaver labrums.
yeah. So in my opinion, I'm going to agree with these guys this time. I am going to agree that the Lions get a B or a B minus. And listen, Brad always says he doesn't need to win free agency. He wants to win the draft. He wants to win in the regular season, not the off season. So I'm going to give them a B minus. I'm going to switch it to a B minus just because we didn't go out and get the flashiest thing. We still need an edge. We still need a defensive tackle. But you know what? I think the draft is the perfect opportunity to fix everything that ails us, and we'll be just fine. What do you think, Riley?
Yeah, I would say maybe even a B plus for me. So it's kind of like I'm giving all these glowing grades for every team in the division, but if I say, hey, Minnesota gets an A, well, you damn well better if you spend that much money, right? If you're looking at this, as Will always says, the roster roulette. We can just look at the name value of the players that the Lions added. Okay, it's not like you said, it's not the sexiest thing in the world, but I think last year I remember when they signed and acquired Carlton Davis, and then they drafted Rickshaw. It was because Carlton Davis he was always going to be a 1-year Lion, more than likely, right? And so then the season plays. I remember the Houston game in particular. You get emotionally attached to these guys, but if you just remove the emotion, Davis was always going to be here for a year. So if you told me 12 months ago, hey, Davis will leave, but then you're going to bring in DJ Reed, hell yeah, all right, that sounds great. Let's do that. So I think we're going to see after the draft. I think that they've filled in the pieces. Now you can go in with the draft, and then a draft and attack the needs that you still have. The best thing that the Lions have done, in my opinion, and the thing that Dan Campbell does so well, and I think Will honestly has the same trait, you empower your players. The players love playing for Dan Campbell. So Jared Goff, Monrod, Penny, this is their team. Aiden Hutchinson, Sam Laporta, this is their team. That's why the Lions are going to continue to be a good team, because the players say this is ours. And that's where you would make the argument where all these Bears players are bought and brought in. Now it's a different way of going about it, but the Lions are going to be good because they have returning players. So you didn't have the need to go spend as much in free agency. So the team's already kind of built. So, I can't say, well, you're in a mansion and you just upgraded you put some new blinds on the window, so I'm only going to give you a C. No, it's still a mansion. It's still a beautiful team. It's still a beautiful roster and way that it's made up. So I think I'm going to give them a B plus.
Okay. This might be a little bit of a long-winded answer, but whatever.
Fire away.
I think when you have to evaluate what the Lions have done, I think you have to look at it from two lenses. One, what happened last year was catastrophic beyond, means that we've ever seen in the NFL. And there was a couple of teams last year that really suffered from the injury bug. So to consider, like what you just said, Riley, that maybe they're considering the players that were injured last year coming back and they're healthy this year. They pretty much had a season off, or a lot of them that were injured, early and didn't play the rest of the season. They've had a lot of time to recoup, right? Their body's going to be fresh. They've gone through a lot of rehab, and they're going to be ready to go. So expecting that they're going to be healthy. And then also the other lens is, what was this team doing last year when all of these guys were on the field? The ones that they brought back that were on last year's team. Well, they had arguably the number one offensive line in the league. They had arguably the number one offense in the league and a top 5 defense, which through the first 12 weeks of the season averaged less than 17 points given up on the defense, which was number 2 in the NFL. If you're telling me that we're bringing back the exact same team that did all of that last year, and now they're able to play an entire season, why wouldn't you want that back? And then if you add a few supplements on top of it, and then you hit the draft like Brad always does and does a good job, there's no reason why you wouldn't expect this team to hit the ground running. I don't care about the coaching changes because, and I've heard this from other people, that they say, well, the Lions lost Ben Johnson, their offense is going to fall off, or they lost Aaron Glenn and their defense is going to fall off. Well, you know what? Most of you were saying that Aaron Glenn sucks. Most of you were saying that Aaron Glenn was on the hot seat. Most of you are saying that Aaron Glenn couldn't, call the game, fight his way out of a paper bag. So you go from all that to then saying, well, we lost Aaron Glenn. Oh my God, it's melting. What are we going to do? Well, stop being so wishy-washy, right? This is Dan Campbell's team. This was Dan Campbell's offense before he gave it to Ben Johnson. Let's not forget that. Dan was calling the plays. Ben put his little twists on things, but if you don't think that Dan Campbell didn't have his fingerprints all over this offense, you're wrong. And so I'm not worried one bit at all with what's going to happen offense or defense. I think it's going to get better. Levi Onwuzurike. So let me throw this at you real quick. Let me bring this in, because when we talk about guys that obviously produced at a high level, Levi Onwuzurike is one of them. So, hey, my box is out of the box. Let's just slide that guy over a little bit. Okay, so what this is the double team rate through the first 5 weeks of the 2024 NFL season. Okay. So I hear a lot from people that they say, well, Aiden Hutchinson is the most double team player. He's not by a long shot. Chipped maybe, yes, but not double teamed. So who do you think is on this list? Well, not one, but two Detroit Lions. Where are they? Lee McNeil right here. 44% of the time he was double teamed last year. 44%. Roy Lopez, 43.8%. Well, he's now a Detroit Lion. Okay, let's move down. Levi Onwuzurike, 41.8% of the time he was double teamed. Now, the guy that I didn't see on here, which maybe I just didn't find him, was DJ Reader, but I know damn sure he was double teamed quite a bit. I mean, I watched it happen. I don't know why I don't see his name on here. Maybe I'm just missing it. Sometimes I'm blind. But we know that DJ Reader is taking up some double teams. The reason why I wanted to show you that is because when you bring a guy back like Levi Onwuzurike, that's why. Obviously, teams schemed against him, and there's a reason why. He was one of the best at getting into the backfield last year. He didn't produce a bunch of sacks with it, right? But he did produce some pressures, and he was fairly effective at getting some TFLs. I give that re-signing and bringing him back a B+. So individually, that's a B+ for me. And the fact that you got him at a $5.5 million deal when he was projected to make probably $13 to $16 million a year, super smart. Now, that was his first year of being healthy. Let's watch him double it up this year and stay healthy. Watch how much better he's going to be this year because he's got confidence behind him. That's big to me. So the fact that they got him back on this prove it deal, I think that it was extremely important to bring him back. Roy Lopez. Yeah, he didn't have the greatest PFF grades. Wasn't the greatest team that he played on, but obviously teams schemed to him. 41% of the time he's double teamed. So how many times are you going to watch Lee McNeil, Roy Lopez, DJ Reader, on the line potentially together? May not happen. But even if you're plugging and pulling these guys in on rotation, teams are going to have to pay attention to players like Roy Lopez, Lee McNeil, Levi Onwuzurike, and DJ Reader eating up double teams, which means guys like Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport, Josh Pascal, whoever's on the other end, should be able to get more free. Super smart signing by the Lions. I'm going to give that a B for right now. DJ Reed, A-. The guy's proven. I know that I wasn't high on him, and I respect the hell out of his body of work. Listening to him speak in his press conference sold me even more that this guy gets it at a much higher level than just playing football. He gets it. Like, he internalizes everything, and he knows what it means to want to finish first, but how hard you have to work to get there. The Lions obviously lost Carlton Davis, which he had a really good season last year. I think that he played really well. He fit really well on this team. I think that he embodied everything that we wanted, as a Lions fan for him to become. And he was exactly what we needed. But yes, to your point, Riley, expecting him to be here for anything longer than a year was wishful thinking. And I think that I realized that immediately when Brad Holmes was asked last year when they brought him in, hey, are you going to get an immediate extension done with Carlton Davis? And he said, not right now. So I think you knew back then it was a 1-year rental unless Carlton Davis was able to sign something that was more affordable, which it wasn't. 3 years at $48 million, 32 guaranteed. I think that this was a phenomenal signing. The Lions obviously got him now for 3 years, so our DBs are pretty much locked down. Might need one more, but I think we're locked down. Derek Barnes, again, I'm not extremely high on him, but I think that this is a really good signing as well, especially for what you got him for. 3 years at $24.5 million, I think was the deal. $16 million guaranteed. Relatively inexpensive contract for a guy that has so much upside. Even if you draft a linebacker that plays better than him, that's not a bad thing. You can walk away from this contract and not lose your ass. But he's someone to grow with, and it provides stability at the linebacker position where Alex Anzalone is on his way out. So at some point, you're going to have to fill that position, but you've got Jack, and now you have Derek Barnes as two staples on this defense. So I think just those signings alone, just bringing those guys back, and with all the other moves that the Lions made, you pretty much brought back the entire team from last year. Tim Patrick, phenomenal signing. Like, the guy's been battling his way back from injury. Last year, he proved that he could be a consistent target for Jared Goff when needed, and a guy that was producing over 12 yards a catch. Perfect signing to bring him back this year and see what he can do. Who else did we bring back? Dan Skipper. Obviously, he's the heart and soul of this team at times.
Tim Patrick.
I said Tim.
Oh, you did? You did. Okay.
That's what I was just talking about was Tim, yeah. Kenny Yeboah. So, look, I know that he's not ringing all the alarms for everybody, but the more you watch his tape, the more I fall in love with the fact that he's a blocker, right? He's the no rock if I don't block kind of guy. I think that it's a great signing. The Kyle Allen signing, I know that not a lot of people are high on this, but that's because he's not expected to play. He's the Nate Sudfeld type of signing that is going to be the guy in Jared Goff's ear, the guy that is going to help him see, the guy that is going to help him study and prepare. That's what Nate Sudfeld was for. That's why he stuck around as long as he did. It wasn't because he could play, because he definitely couldn't, but it's because of what he did with his brain, right? And I think that is invaluable to a team. You don't want these guys to play, but if he has to play, we know that he can. He has experience. The experience, I think, is the factor that I love the most. On the defensive side of the football, again, Grant Stewart, this guy is an absolute animal in special teams. Indianapolis Colts fans did not want to see this happen, but it happened. I think bringing in Rock Ya-Sin, high upside type of guy, I think his ceiling is what it is. He hasn't been able to put together an extremely good career just yet because of injuries. So even if we can get him to stay healthy throughout the year, he's not going to have to play a whole lot. He's your emergency guy right now. If he sticks to the team, he's a guy that if you need him in a pinch, right, like the Kindle Vildor, then, yeah, hopefully he plays at a high level. And I think that he will. Avonte Maddox, I think this was another no-brainer. This guy can play. And now you've backdoored Amik Robertson, right, with a very capable backup in the nickel, so you can leave Brian Branch at safety. So I think what the Lions have done this year is proven to you that we're going to run it back with the same team, and now in the draft, we're going to make this team even better. Overall, I know that I've given some of the other teams A-minuses, right? I'm not going to say the Lions deserve an A, but I think they deserve an A-minus. I'm going to put them right in the same category for two reasons, or maybe more, but they didn't spend any money. They got all these guys back on the cheap. You brought back Marcus Davenport, who I don't care what anybody says. You can disagree with me all you want. The guy was playing at a pretty damn good clip last year until he got hurt. When I saw everything in training camp, I was so excited to see these guys play. As long as he stays healthy, I think everyone at the end of the season is going to say, man, that was a great pickup. He's got to make the team. He's got to stay healthy. I think Josh Pascal's your starter right now. So it's his job to lose. But that doesn't mean that the Lions aren't going to draft an edge early or a defensive end early. And then he's going to fight for that position as well because Pascal can play on the inside. If I look around the league or if I look around the other analysts, the DJ Reed signing got an A+, A-, A, B+, call it an A. Sports Illustrated said Marcus Davenport was a D. Derek Barnes was a C. 33rd team said Tim Patrick was a B+. Kyle Allen was a C. Levi Onwuzurike was an A. Roy Lopez, not Ray Lopez, was a B+. DJ Reed was an A-. So favorable grades kind of going around the league from just about everybody. If you were to condense it all, I think that everyone is kind of in that B to B+ range. I'm going to give them an A- because they brought back the same team for the most part, and then they made it better. So that's my long-winded take.
Yeah, unlike the other teams in the NFC North, the Detroit Lions did not have to go out and get a lot in free agency. They're already a very complete team. The only thing we did was change coordinators. We're bringing back all the same guys. We lost Zeitler. Well, we already had Mahogany on the team to replace him. Other than that, we didn't lose a whole lot of guys other than Carlton, and we brought in DJ Reed to take his spot. So to me, you already have a very complete team that won 15 games last year. If our team would have been healthy last year, do you think we would have won another game? We might have. We might have beat the Bills, and we probably would have won a playoff game. So I'm thinking there isn't too much tweak-wise to do to this roster, so we didn't have to go out and overspend in free agency.
It's a great point, but I think the other thing that we have to realize too, which I think the three of us understand, is, and I know it's like a broken record, but
yeah,
if you want Aiden Hutchinson to stick around, if you want Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch and Sam Laporta and Kirby Joseph, and Jahmyr Gibbs, if you want these guys to stick around, you can't go out and spend a boatload of money in free agency. It just doesn't work.
Yep. Simple. It's very simple. That's you just hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it comes down to. We did have one more super chat in there.
Two more. Had one from Mike P too.
Okay, so Laj 78 $5 super chat. Appreciate you, buddy. Says thanks for the great work, guys, and keeping a level head. I'm tired of hearing how if the Lions don't get a high price end, they suck. Hey, I appreciate you, man. The one thing that you'll understand, some days you come in and you listen to this channel and you may not agree, and that's okay. But if you listen for the next 3, 4, 5 days in a row, you'll see how everything kind of just comes together. It's not roses and rainbows all the time. Like Eric he's the fan of the fan, right? He always positive. I'm the realistic guy that gets into the stats, the analytics, the research. Also a fan. I mean, Lions loyal member of 27 years now. This will be 27 year 27 this year. So, been there, done that, right? I've been on both sides of it. Extremely disappointed about the team and lately extremely positive over the last 4 or 5 seasons. So will be 5th season. But you have to listen to more than one show. You'll understand that the conversations that we have here we try to be inclusive. Lately, we haven't been able to get into the chat as much, which I have to do a better job at. And I'll probably do more of that on the night shows where there's more of an opportunity, because the morning show is really about getting information out to the masses, less conversation with the chat. So the night shows will be more involved in that. So if that's what you're looking for, it will be there. Mike P donated $5 as well. No message, but Mike P, appreciate you. Hope you and your wife are doing well. And thank you for being part of Rockhound Detroit Lions, obviously one of the members of the squad. So Riley, we really didn't get much. We didn't get anything at Lions today, so I don't know how much time you guys have this morning. But let's get into at least one Lions thing. Riley, did you have anything on Lions today? I don't think you did.
No, I didn't. I didn't. I had Puka bit, but obviously, whichever direction you want to go.
Hey, let's tie in the what the Lions spent and where they spent it. Want to do that?
Where's that at?
My last one on the Detroit Lions, how the Detroit Lions are spending on defense versus offense.
Is that a long one or a short one?
I think it'd be pretty short.
I don't see it on the main sheet. Oh, I see it. Yeah, roll it. Go for it.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the Lions defense and offense and how they have spent overall on not only the Detroit Lions, but where they stand in the league on what they're paying offense versus defense and each section of each of those. So overall on the defense, the Lions have spent $96,851,198. So 96, almost 97 million. And that is 25th in the entire NFL. Now their interior defensive line, that part of the line is at 30 million, and that's 11th in the NFL. The edge position, and this is the one that everyone is clamoring for, is only $19 million, and that is 25th in the entire NFL. That is going to change some, I'm sure, with the draft. And then once we get the Hutch contract going, I have a feeling that number is going to be much more. At linebacker, we're 10th in the NFL at spending at 21 million. At cornerback, we're 23rd in the NFL at 18.6 million.
Hey, real quick, Riley's got to bounce. So Riley, give us your final 30 before you go.
Yeah, just one happy birthday to Megan, and thank you to everybody for the super chats. And there was somebody made a comment and listed all three of us. It's just an honor for me to be part of this network, part of the show. Love Will, love Eric, and all of you guys. So we'll be back tomorrow. I'll have some more Lions stuff ready to go, and hope everybody has an awesome Tuesday.
All right, Riley, go bang it out, man. Have a good day.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
All right, so you were saying?
Yeah, so at cornerback, the Lions have spent $18 million this year, and that's 23rd in the NFL. And safeties at $7 million, and that is 29th in the NFL. So the defensive overall is 25th in the NFL. And then we ranked 11th, 25th, 10th, 23rd, and 29th in spending in all the different categories. So that's really, really low. So when you look at what the Lions spent on defense versus offense, it is much, much different. So overall on defense is 96.8 million. On offense, it's 148.6 million, which is 7th in the NFL. On quarterbacks, it's 35 million, and that's 13th in the NFL. Running backs, 14.2 million, that's 6th in the NFL. Wide receivers at 31 million, that's 10th in the NFL. But here's the strange one. Tight ends, $5.2 million. That's because you have Sam Laporte on his rookie deal and not much behind him. That's 31st in the NFL. There's only one team that spends less on tight ends than the Lions. Offensive line, 61.4 million. That's 7th in the NFL. So the Lions are 7th overall in spending on offense in the entire NFL. So you can see where the Lions were 25th on defense and 7th in offense. You can see where the Lions are spending their money. And that's 148.6 million versus 96.8 million. Quite the difference there. Do you think the Lions will start getting those numbers closer to each other?
So let's let me point out a couple of things here.
Sure.
The spending that is, you would think that there's this big gap, right? And clearly, I mean, it looks that way when you spend 96 million on defense and 148 on offense. But I think what people fail to remember here, you just signed Amon-Ra St. Brown to a mega deal. You just signed Jared Goff to a mega deal. We've always had one of the more expensive offensive lines in the league. You just signed Penei Sewell to a mega deal. So they haven't extended Kirby. They haven't extended Aiden. Those days are coming. They extended Aleem. That was only a $20 million deal. Now, some of these deals haven't really fully hit the cap yet. But if you go back and look, I wish it would pull up. For some reason, it's taking forever. But if you were to go back and look, it's kind of been this way for the last 4 or 5 seasons. Offense was always more expensive than defense. And then you also have to remember this main fact, which is Brad Holmes drafts. And because you draft so well, your overall cap is going to be lower. So back in 2023, the Lions were number 1 in the NFL for offensive spending at $106.9 million.
Wow.
That was in 23, right? That number's obviously grown since 2023. So defensive wise, where's it at? I just want defense. I don't want defensive line. This thing is being dumb. Sometimes Spotrac just makes it really difficult to figure out where it is.
Yeah.
I just want, so this says offensive spending. I don't see anything that says defensive spending, and I don't know why.
That's kind of neat to look at it year over year, or like from Brad's first year to Brad's 5th year.
Right.
How much different it is.
I'll put this together. It's obviously going to take a little bit more time.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, man, everything is loading super slow. I'm going to have to get on the phone with Micro Center again today. At the end of the day, let's just not forget that the drastic difference, again, like I just said, it's because, one, they draft and they have a lot of cheaper contracts defensively. But these numbers are going to, I think, get a little bit closer once you start to see some of these contracts hit, number one, and number two, some of these extensions get done. I mean, you add $40 million to your bottom line with Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, boom, you're right there. Next year, that offensive number, that's going to grow to about 190.
Oh, man.
Just with Jared Goff's contract.
Yeah.
But you're going to have other contracts fall out. So, it just, there's an ebb and a flow to it. What I would say is a team that spends X on offense and X on defense, who cares? Right? Yeah. I think at the end of the day, as long as you win football games, it doesn't matter what you spend. I want to shout back to Kevin Barr's his statement in here, because I mean this is so it's a great analogy of what Brad Holmes is doing. He says, so some folks like to head to the freezer and throw their dinner in the microwave for 60 seconds, and that's good enough. Brad likes to select fresh ingredients and take his time preparing a meal. And I guess that's synonymous with let Brad cook, right? Let Brad cook. So overall on the poll today, the consensus with 64 votes was a B for the Detroit Lions. I gave us an A-. I mean, I can see the B too. But at the end of the day, Kevin Barr, I think that's a great analogy, because if you want to have this 60-second team, right, that is free agency, spend a lot of money, buy it, right? You're buying a pre-made meal that is in the freezer, you're throwing it in the microwave, it's ready now. Versus I'm going to go to Fresh Time or whatever, I'm going to buy all these nice organic ingredients, I'm going to go home, and it's probably going to take me 3 hours to make dinner. Well, when you take that first bite of that meal that you just cultivated for 3 hours, it is going to taste so good if you know what the hell you're doing. It's going to taste so good versus this slop that you just got out of a Michelina's. I don't buy that crap. So a Michelina's meal, right? The big difference, right? A wet, soggy, nasty noodle or you want something that has been freshly cultivated that's got a little bit of crunch and crisp and a lot of homegrown flavor in it. So what Brad is doing is he's trying to earn a Michelin star with this team. I think he's doing a good job. He's doing a great job. And I think this draft is going to set him apart from every other team in the NFL when he finally gets some of the pieces that you've been waiting for as fans. This is the right draft. You know how last year, Eric, how he said, I think I'm a pretty good at talent evaluator of corners.
Yeah.
And then he doubles down on corners in the draft and in free agency. Well, why has he been waiting so long to grab another edge? Why has he been waiting so long to supplement Lee McNeil? Is it because the talent hasn't been there? I mean, if you go back and look at the last few drafts, how many really great edge rushers and defensive tackles have come out? I think that's going to be a great segment maybe for tomorrow. Yeah. Is let's go back and look at the last few drafts and how many great defensive tackles and great defensive ends in the area of where the Lions were picking ended up, being really good in the NFL. Because what I would say is I think it's few and far between. And unless you, again, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I called Will McDonald, I called Kobe Turner, I called Jared Verse, but that doesn't mean that the Lions could have got those players, right? That doesn't mean that there was an opportunity for them to select those players, but those are some damn good football players that came out recently. I would question how many other great ones have come out recently.
Yeah. The only one I can really think of is Fisk. I wish the Lions would have got him, and I was clamoring for the Lions to get him.
Yeah, Fisk was another one. I think that his issue was he had short arms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he slid a little bit. But if you utilize him in the right way, then I think scheme fit is everything. Where did he end up going? Wasn't it mid-second round, early second round?
Yeah. Yeah. It was the Rams' second pick.
Right. Yeah, super smart. So Braden Fisk was a top 10 draft pick last year on just about everybody's board. Not for me, right? He was a second round guy. Ended up going, early in the second round. Let's see if he doubles up and has a, really great second season. But that defense that they're constructing over there in LA is really good. They're doing a really great job. And I think that they'll back it up with another linebacker this year. All right, what do you want to finish with? What else do we have? There was one other one that I think I wanted to get to, and that's the Zadarius Smith thing. So
we can do that.
I'll let you go through it, then I'll give you my points on this because I keep seeing this stuff in the chat, or not the chat, the comments, and I've tried to respond to a few people, but let's have it out on Zadarius Smith.
All right. So did the Detroit Lions make a mistake by letting Zadarius Smith go? And this is from Matt Bowen at ESPN. The Detroit Lions realized Zadarius Smith, due to his contract structure, which included nearly $9 million in bonuses due early in the 2025 league year. A contract restructure or pay cut was reportedly not agreed upon, leading to his release before free agency. Cutting Smith cleared $5.7 million in cap space with no dead money. The article questions the Lions' subsequent moves to address their need at edge rusher. Have they done enough? Only re-signing Davenport? Well, I would say no. They're going to have to try to get someone in the draft for sure. And re-signing Marcus Davenport is the most notable move so far, even though a lot of fans didn't want it. I did. And alongside some other smaller re-signings suggesting they're going to rely on the draft. And that's exactly what I think. Matt Bowen argues that the Lions might have made the wrong choice if it were between keeping Smith or Davenport, especially considering Smith's availability in free agency. So Matt Bowen ranked Smith as the 12th best remaining free agent, highlighting his 9 sacks and 38 pressures last season with both the Browns and the Lions. He describes Smith as a speed to power rusher who is versatile and can help a contender as a rotational edge. Smith played in 33 games in the last 2 seasons compared to Davenport's 6 games. Matt Bowen suggested the Lions' decision to release him is increasingly looking like a mistake given his continued availability and production. He also implies the Lions haven't added a proven, consistently available edge rusher after letting go of Smith. So this is my question to everyone in the chat. Did the Detroit Lions make a mistake due to money by letting Zadarius Smith walk in free agency and releasing him? So do you think it was the right thing for them to do? Did they make a mistake? Or is Brad going to get it right, bring in someone cheaper through the draft, and hit a home run? That's what I think the Lions are going to do.
Okay. Look, this made a ton of sense for the Lions to obviously release him. Now, prior to this, no one expected it. At least, I shouldn't say no one. A lot of us did not expect this to happen.
Yep.
But I personally missed what his contract entailed. And it's this simple. On March 14th, Zadarius Smith had an options bonus, kind of like what we were just talking about with DJ Reed, right? And his options bonus. He had an options bonus that was $6.9 million this year if he was on the roster on the 3rd day of the league year, if I understand it correctly. Well, that 6.9 is him just being on the roster. What happens if he gets injured? What happens if he doesn't make the squad for some reason? So that $6.99 million option bonus due on March 14th, that's a ton of money anyway, right? But to make matters worse, next season, had they picked up his contract, right, and kept him on the roster, he would have been due another $5.75 million in 2026 for not being on the roster. So the Lions would have paid over $11.25 million for Zadarius Smith this season, plus the balance of his contract for 2025, which ballooned up to $16 million that the Lions would have spent between this year and next year. So the Lions saved 6.9 this year. They saved 5.75 next year by releasing Zadarius Smith. Unless you can tell me that Zadarius Smith was worth $16 million or at least $11 million for one season, then yeah, this doesn't make any sense to keep him. That's a lot of money for an aging defensive end at 32 years old. Still had 9 sacks last year, 5 with the Browns. I think it was 4 with the Lions or vice versa. I think that he still has some ability and I think he still has some time left in him to play in the league. But here's the biggest question. Why hasn't he been signed? How come no one has signed him yet?
Yep.
And I think that should speak volumes to everybody. Why has he not been signed? There's a reason, maybe 2 or 3 reasons. He's 32. He wants too much money. Or maybe he thinks he's worth too much money. That could be 1 and 2. 3 would be he's probably going to wait till after the draft like a lot of players do. Which teams are going to need my services because they didn't get, another edge rusher? Or he may wait until training camp. Someone gets injured. Well, that team now needs somebody. So your negotiations, your leverage in the negotiation goes up because now you're able to ask for more money because that team needs you. Or he may wait until the season and see what happens, prior to the trade deadline or thereafter. And if there's a contending team that needs his services, well, he can argue for a little bit of money. So I think that that's why Zadarius Smith hasn't been signed yet. But I also think that there's a little bit more to this than what's on the surface. I think that a lot of fans just say, oh, my God, we lost Zadarius Smith, and they think the world is Zadarius Smith. I did too. But I don't think that I don't think that it makes a lot of sense to waste that kind of money on a player. What could we do with $11 million? Well, here's an idea. You can sign the entire rookie class this year. That's what you can do. What can you do with $11 million? Well, you could sign Kirby Joseph to an extension. That's what you could do. So I think that this was a smart move for the Lions. Yeah, hate to see him go. But there's an opportunity for him still to come back. So let's not be totally out on the option here. You know, there's a few other guys that the Lions have released that also haven't found their way to another team. So Zadarius Smith not re-signed. Jalen Reeves-Maben not re-signed. Michael Badgley, I don't think anyone cares. Amir Abdullah not signed by anybody yet either. So a few Lions that, you know, still finding their way around. Jamal Williams, another one.
Yeah.
So, you know, all good releases or non-options by Brad Holmes.
Yeah, I think with Zadarius too, a lot of the fans are caught up in what if.
Yeah.
The what ifs. What if we had Zadarius and a healthy Hutch on the field at the same time? What would that look like? That's what everyone wants to see. They want to see what it would have looked like if we would have made it to the Super Bowl and Hutch would have been healthy enough to play in the game. What would that have looked like to have two dominant edge rushers on the field at the same time? Well, I think you're going to get to see it this year. I think you're going to have a rookie. I think that's going to be our first pick, is going to be an edge. And listen, if we would have kept Zadarius under his current contract and we bring in this rookie, the same rookie that we're going to draft anyway, don't you think that stunts his growth by having Zadarius there? Or Zadarius isn't happy because the rookie's getting all the snaps and Zadarius isn't getting enough, and then he's wanting to go somewhere else. I really think Zadarius is going to wait until into the season. He's going to want to skip training camp. He's going to wait for a contender that has an injury and needs somebody to play, and he'll swoop in and play half or, you know, part of the season due to injury for some other team. And you never know. Maybe he will make it back to the Lions. Maybe we have another injury this year and we need him back again. So, you know, he loves playing for the Lions.
Saying that.
Hey, I'm trying to
this is the third time you spoke that into existence.
trying to make it go away if just by ignoring it isn't going to make it go away.
Yeah, but you can't talk about it. You even said the same thing about Jared Goff the other day. Like that's no. That's especially with you and your damn gremlins, man. It's a bad omen. You better rub some crystals together. But to your point, Eric, like what you're talking about here, I think that this goes a little bit further. That you have a depth chart right now with Aiden Hutchinson, Al-Qadim Muhammad, Mitchell Agood, Nate Lynn, Josh Pascal, Marcus Davenport, Pat O'Connor, Isaac Ukwu. Where's the room? You got 8 guys already. And Mekhi Wingo, also inside-outside guy. I would say Mitchell Agood, Nate Lynn, Isaac Ukwu, you know, those guys probably will make the practice squad, at least right now. We don't know what they're going to be looking like this year, but I would definitely say this line is stacked, and they're probably going to add some more camp bodies. You already know what you have in Zadarius Smith. There's no reason to put him on the roster. And someone else in the chat just said something that I've been saying this whole time too. Where was it? And I'll get to the super chat 1 second. I really appreciate you. 1 second. It was, wow, it couldn't have been that long ago, was it? Do I got to keep going back? It's just there.
Yeah, they're active today.
Oh, here it is. Carrie, Simchich. I butchered your name. I'm sorry, butchered your name. Says, I believe he has a gentleman's agreement. And that's something that I've spoken about last year. And I believe it happened with Kyle Pecco when I put out my roster predictions and I said that, you know, Kyle Pecco wasn't going to make the roster, but I expected him to come back onto the practice squad because these free agents, right, the guys that have been in the league for more than 3 seasons that don't have to sign with a team, they're not under the thumb of a team, they can go anywhere that they want to go, can simply just not sign with anyone and just wait until there's an opening on the practice squad or whatever, and they go back to the team that they want to play with. They can do that. Is it stacking the deck? Maybe. Happens all the time. So you might release, when you see the Lions release really good players this year, some of them are coming back. And it's because they want to play for the Detroit Lions. And I expect some of that stuff to happen. But maybe Z is hanging out and saying, you know what? I'll be back. I may not make $16 million or $11 million, but this is a team that can go somewhere, and we'll see what happens this summer. So big shout out to All Balls No D, says $5 super chat. We had a top 5 defense before the injuries. Those players are coming back. We can win a Super Bowl with our offense and a top 5 defense. 1,000%. I agree with you. But here's what the rest of the people are saying, and I'm not saying I agree with this.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
I am sure about that. Because matter of fact, last year when we spoke about defensive grades and where you needed to finish, we were projecting that the Lions would finish as a top 10 defense. And if they could finish as a top 10 defense, we knew that they had the offense, that it would carry them into the postseason to win a lot of football games. And man, they still ripped off 15 wins, but the last couple of injuries, the last couple of weeks of the season was just too much. So let me give you a big shout out for defense here.
The Detroit Lions select Brian Branch, defensive back, Alabama.
Thank you, All Balls No D, for your $5 donation. We've almost hit the goal for tomorrow, so I'm going to start doing super chat goals every day for the next day. So if we hit our goal, we're just going to keep ads off for the next day to start the day. Like, we won't even run ads.
Oh, there we go.
Or maybe I run them for like 10 minutes just to make YouTube happy. But anyway, look, the Lions are stacked, I think. I think that we got a really good team assembled. A lot of questions. It happens every year. Fans get they get in their feelings, right? We tend to get in our feelings a little bit. You see all these other teams doing these things. I would say this, Eric, I don't know if we had this as a topic somewhere. I thought that we did. Something about this year's free agency class. Do you remember seeing something like that?
What do you mean?
How it was terrible?
Oh, yeah.
I thought we had something like that. I don't know if it was you or somebody else that brought that topic up, but the free agency class this year not being...
Yeah, reportedly it was one of the worst in years.
Yeah. Which is nuts, because at the same time you have one of the best drafts and
some of the most money that was spent in free agency this year ever.
So that's another thing. And even speaking about Trey Hendrickson, do you have 5 more minutes?
Yeah, I got lots of time.
Oh, you have time today. Good. So I want to finish with Trey Hendrickson. I think that what you're seeing with the NFL contracts and the landscape of what's happening now with the salary cap, it's causing some problems to a degree. Players are getting overpaid. I think that what you've seen this season for contracts is way overpayment. And part of that, I think, is due to the rise in the salary cap, agents and players demanding more. If the salary, put it this way, what if the NFL didn't raise the salary cap before free agency? What if they didn't make it known? What if they just kept that a secret? That they have their meeting and they say, look, guys, ladies, gentlemen, we're going to raise it $30 million. We're not going to tell anybody. We'll release that information just before the draft. So then you walk into free agency and nobody knows what the cap's going to go up to. And then you sign all of your contracts and nobody has a clue of what's going on with the salary cap. It'll leak somewhere. But if you don't have that meeting and you don't raise the salary cap before free agency, would that save teams money? Because now they can't go in and say, well, wait a minute, you're going to have an extra $30 million this year. You can absolutely pay me more than I'm worth. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I don't know. They got to do something different. Like I said yesterday, with all the contracts of $30 million or more, now it's cornerbacks, now it's defensive ends, and now all these positions that never got it before. And now they're all making this incredibly high amount of money. And I think that's exactly what some of these free agents are doing. They're strong arming these guys. They're going, hey, oh, that's like Trey Hendrickson. Last year, he was looking for a contract north of $30 million. If you would have signed that contract with him last year, you could have got him for $30 million a year. Now, it might cost you $40 million a year. He's the sack leader in the NFL again. Myles Garrett got 40. Why shouldn't he get 40? They're relatively the same age, and he puts up numbers that are just as good or better than Myles Garrett. So why shouldn't he make Myles Garrett money? And now he knows what the salary cap is. He knows that the teams are getting $30 million more. Now he's going to ask for more money.
Well, so the thing about Myles Garrett is actually quite shocking, which I guess I'm not shocked about it as much as what other people are going to be. And let me see if I can bring this in so you know it's not just coming from me here. Which, by the way, I have unnamed sources that have come to light. I've had some conversations over the last week or so, partly due to recent changes in what I'm able to do. So I will start utilizing, some of these things. I'm apprehensive to, say every day it's an unnamed source. Like, I like to have transparency as much as anybody else, but I feel like that's a slippery slope. Anybody can come out and say, well, it's an unnamed source, or it's a GM, unnamed executive. People do that every year. And I would say the large majority of them are just full of shite. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. All right. So Trey Hendrickson. Let's get into it. Oh, box is almost out of alignment again. Okay, so Trey Hendrickson, according to multiple sources anyway, at least an NFL insider has now revealed he is prepared to sit out the season if he is not traded or given a new contract. Now, according to this article, it says that the Cincinnati Bengals obviously recently signed Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, massive deals, right? Another key piece was Trey Hendrickson, that they were expecting to also get trade done. There was some topic of conversation yesterday that they were working on some deals with Trey, but it doesn't seem like a whole lot got accomplished yesterday. So obviously being the sack leader the last two seasons, they're saying that he is set to sit out the season if he's not traded. He was obviously granted permission to seek a trade. It didn't happen. And if that doesn't happen and he doesn't get a contract extension to meet his demands, apparently negotiations have stalled. Now, yesterday they were saying that contract negotiations picked up again, but according to Jeremy Fowler, the situation is unresolved. And now a holdout is the real possibility. So, quote, I think it's entirely possible, based on what I'm hearing, for him to sit out the year if he doesn't get a new deal. This is what Jeremy Fowler said yesterday on SportsCenter. He also said, quote, I think that's his mindset right now, end quote. So it's certainly unclear, or it is clear right now that Hendrickson has no intention to play out the final year of his deal, while a trade still remains a possibility on draft day or before. That Fowler reported that the Bengals' asking price has been too high, that making it unlikely that this story ends with a trade. I'm curious to know what they're asking, right? We're not going to know what they're asking. Anybody that reports that they know is full of you-know-what. Speculation is one thing, but saying you know something is totally different. Quote, and there's interest. There is trade interest from other teams trying to make this work, but it would take a really hefty trade package, end quote, according to Fowler. He also says, quote, teams aren't willing to do that and pay Hendrickson right now, end quote. So remember what I was talking about earlier, that when you have a deep draft, as there is this year with defensive line, well, this also affects trade value for Trey Hendrickson. Why would a team be willing to give up let's say, a first and a third and a fifth for Trey Hendrickson when you could probably get a starter in the first and a starter possibly in the third, or move your third and your fifth and move up into the second and get 2 starters? They could end up giving you the same production of Trey Hendrickson and, well, for less than half or 1/3 of what Trey is going to make. So could the reigning sack leader re-sign with the Bengals? The question is, and always will be, I think the answer is, yeah. I mean, they're going to have to do something. Otherwise, he's sitting out. So as it's been reported during the offseason, the Bengals are actively working on an extension. However, after handing out $275 million to Chase and Higgins combined, this could mean that Hendrickson is odd man out. This might most likely would be his last season in Cincy, and he may not even play. Now, again, according to Fowler, he believes that they can still work out. I quote, I still think they can work something out, Hendrickson and the Bengals, on a new deal. It's been stagnant as of late. It's sort of stalled, but they have a couple of months at least to try to shake this out and get a new deal done, end quote. So I'm going to leave it at that. Now, for me, I guess the one thing that doesn't make a lot of sense here is, how much do you pay Trey Hendrickson? He's 31 years old, I think, this year.
Yep.
Is he worth $40 million? He's been the sack leader the last 2 seasons, but I will always err on the side of caution. When you look at a guy like Myles Garrett, who's been consistent every single season, and then a guy like Trey, who really good football player, has 2 crazy good seasons. Is it worth to overpay a guy that's 31, I think, this year? He's getting old, right? How many years does he really have left? I think that the market for Trey, no one's going to pay him over $40 million. I think that he's probably in that $32 to $34 million a year. I think it's more in line with the Crosby deal, 33, 34, somewhere in that range. I think if the Bengals are willing to move on that kind of money, this deal probably gets done, but maybe they're not willing to give up that kind of money. I think a trade, and the speculation is the Green Bay Packers are one of the teams that are really hot after Trey Hendrickson, right? That's the biggest rumor right now, is that they've been, I'm sorry?
I haven't heard them. I heard the Colts and Lions. That was it.
I'm not so sure on the Lions.
No, me neither.
That's more rumor. But from what I understand, the Packers, if they want to get Trey Hendrickson in their building, it's going to cost them the 23rd pick and the 159th pick and a second-round pick in 2026. So first and the 159th this year and a second round next year. And I would say that's not terrible. I think that you're going to have to spend a first no matter what on Hendrickson. If the Bengals are turning that down, then that means that they want 2 firsts, and I don't think anyone's going to give that up, especially with this draft. Eric, what's your thoughts on Trey Hendrickson here?
It's a pipe dream for any Lions fans that think they want him, to come to Detroit. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think Brad made a phone call and said, "Hey, what you asking?" And he was like, "Okay, thanks for letting me know." I think that's about how that phone call went, because if they're asking for 2 firsts, there's no way Brad Holmes would ever even give up 1 first, let alone 2. Brad does not say F them picks for any player, and I don't think he ever will. He's got more confidence in his drafting skills than his free agent acquisition, somebody that someone else picked up. Now, he's going to use free agency to supplement his roster, and then he's going to backfill it with the draft. And I just don't think Trey Hendrickson, if I had to guess to what was going to happen with Trey Hendrickson, I'm going to say that he's going to sit out a few games. Then he's going to figure out, I'm losing a bunch of money. Might as well finish out this season. He comes in, he plays, finishes out his season, then he becomes a free agent next year.
So I want to remind Mr. Hendrickson that this kind of stuff usually doesn't work. When you sit out, if you remember, a guy by the name of Le'Veon Bell was having a very good career, ended up having, I think, a Liz Frank injury, but he came back, was having a really good career, and then he decided to sit out an entire season. And that completely derailed his value in career. So sitting out is not an answer that typically works. But I will say this. I think that the market dynamics in the NFL have gravely shifted. I think it's changing at such a rapid pace, especially with this latest rise in the NFL salary cap the last 2 seasons being the main driver of what we're seeing right now. I think that salaries for top performers are rising faster than what teams really want to pay. I think that teams are facing mounting pressure to balance not only the salary cap, but also their roster dynamics, right? I mean, being able to facilitate an extremely productive team year after year after year is becoming more difficult. Even though the salary cap is raising, I think that you're seeing elite talent getting paid way more than what they deserve, if that makes any sense. They deserve something, but I don't think any player deserves $55 million as a quarterback. I don't think that a defensive end deserves $40 million to play football for one season. I think that is crazy numbers, and it is to the detriment of the NFL if they allow it to continue. They have to at some point develop a cap, a true cap on a position, I think, if they want this to continue. And that'll help teams obviously field, a better team. But Hendrickson's willingness to sit out could inspire other players to maybe do the same thing. And I think that's bad for the NFL. I think that potentially, leading to a wave of contract disputes across the league would be bad for their brand. I think that it would not bode well for anybody on either side. I think that this contract dispute really highlights the ongoing challenge surrounding player compensation in the NFL. How much is too much? Defensive players like Hendrickson often find themselves undervalued compared to their offensive counterparts, which, I mean, the NFL is all about offense these days. The negotiations obviously emphasize the need for more equitable compensation structures, is what I'm thinking. And the pressures that players face in this balancing of financial aspirations and the risks of injury and career longevity, I think is what is cultivating this massive pressure in the league right now to get something done. So at some point, I think the NFLPA needs to look at this and say, look, man, like, stuff's out of control. We need to put caps on. It's based on performance. It's based on years in the league. And, they need to put some sort of a metric together that allows them to get paid handsomely, right? Reward them for their performance. Make it a performance-based metric, not a what-if metric. Well, I did this last year. I think I'll be able to do that again next year. And it never happens, right? These guys get paid, and they never get back to what they did before. It'd be interesting to see how Myles Garrett plays this year. I think that that's going to be the first domino to fall. Let's watch Myles Garrett. How does he perform this year? Is he going to have another 14, 15 sack season? We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
What if that turns out to be the next Deshaun Watson contract?
Oh, God. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You give a guy the most that anyone's ever gotten at a position again, and then he falls flat on his face. What if he comes out and he's injured this year? Gets 1 sack.
I mean, I think he's obviously going to have more than 1 sack, but the point that I'm trying to make is, in the NFL, it's what have you done for me lately? And then it's also, you're paying for what somebody has done, or are you paying them for what you think they're going to do, or both? I think it's both. But that is, again, I hate to use this term twice today, a slippery slope to walk down, because quarterback especially, Jared Goff has had 3, if not 4, 3 incredible seasons back to back to back. That's not typical in the NFL. And so when you look at his contract that you just paid or about to pay him handsomely, you would think, okay, a lot of channels were saying that Jared Goff was going to have a bad year this last season in 24. That watch everything fall apart for the Lions because Jared Goff has just gotten paid and now he's going to be dog crap. Well, that didn't happen. He had his best statistical season ever, really. I mean, outside of a few extra interceptions, still wasn't a bad year. He had an exceptional year. Broke all sorts of franchise and NFL records. And hell, even threw a perfect game. Even had a perfect passer rating in QBR in that in a couple of games. So what does he do this year? Does he follow it up again? If he doesn't have the same statistical craziness that he had last year, is that a failure? No. I think that if he throws over 4,000 yards, that's a win. I think that if he throws 30 TDs, that's a win, especially when, you're scoring 20 plus on the ground with just one running back. So I think that those are the things you have to look at. Look at the guys that get paid. What do they do the next year or two? Oftentimes it doesn't work out. So anyway, final 30 to you. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, I don't think the Lions are going after Trey Hendrickson.
No.
I think the Lions were very financially responsible in free agency. I think the Lions are trying to re-sign their own, and they're trying to build through the draft. So the rest of the NFC North, watch out. The Lions are coming.
It hasn't changed for me. The Lions are going to continue doing what they set out to do in 2021. Draft, develop, re-sign, rinse, repeat, supplement in free agency, and do it all over again the next year. And they're going to continue building a squad that is deep like they are this year again. We didn't know how deep they were last year until last year happened, but they're going to be an extremely deep team that is not afraid to play someone that isn't making the most money, someone that hasn't been drafted the highest. They're willing to play the best football players, and I think that's what matters the most. A little bit of news that came out of yesterday, which I'll be highlighting in a video today. I tried to get it done yesterday, couldn't get it done. Aiden Hutchinson, contract extension. Is it coming? Well, my video that's going to release coming soon is likely that there is an extension that is going to get done, and I'm going to highlight what all those facts are here in a couple of hours. Appreciate you guys joining us on the Rise and Grind Morning Show. Smash that like button on the way out. Subscribe if you haven't already. I think we hit 9,000 today. And if we did, I'll be back later for the mock draft, and we'll give away a mini helmet. So join me tonight for the mock draft. We'll see you guys later on. Eric, have a wonderful day, man. Everybody in the chat, thank you for joining. Mods, members, you're great. Appreciate you all. You're the best part of Rockdown Detroit Lions. You always have been. You always will be. It's all about you. Take care. One pride. See you later.